City Council Committee on Administration and Finance co-posted Committee of the Whole met in the Council Chamber on Thursday, May 31st, 2018 at 6 p.m. for the purpose of discussing the matters listed below. Notice this meeting was posted on May 14th, 2018 at 9:27 a.m. This meeting is being recorded. Currently absent from the committee is Councilor Fury. Not sure when he's going to get here. And also present from the Committee of the Whole is Councilor Milo. So we have a whole series of departments in the fiscal year 19 operating budget meetings and capital improvement plans for the following departments, and I'll run through the list. Mayor, legal, solicitor and licensing, human resources, admin, workers' comp, unemployment, and group insurance, city clerk, city council, elections, planning, conservation commission, planning board, market and tourism, historic commission, and capital improvement plans. Before that, there's one matter of housekeeping that we have to do as a committee, which is we have to officially, because of our rules, we've already agreed to reschedule our meeting on the 14th, our standing meeting, to meet earlier in the day at 5 p.m. And so if I could have a motion from a councilor?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. A motion to meet on June 14th, 5 o'clock p.m. for Administration and Finance Committee.
Okay, seconded by so the motion made by Councilor Dibble and seconded by Councilor Flynn because he had his hand up first. So, seeing no discussion, all those in favor? Opposed? So moved. So that's our. I'll scribble that down quickly. Okay. That's our first order of business. Move faster than I can write. So on to just a little bit more housekeeping business for you guys. So this, because we have two people who are new to the process, this is our the beginning of a marathon series of budget hearings that we'll be having on virtually all the departments. The protocol over the last few years has been to hold this by a, we do each department, the department head meets in many and most cases as possible. The mayor is usually here to discuss this with any questions. If we, for each department at the end of it, if there are no changes to the budget as proposed, then we simply have a single vote to approve the number as it's been presented to us of personnel and non-personnel items. If we do make a change to it, we can only reduce these numbers, we can't increase them. If we reduce a number on a department and that vote carries, then we would have to vote on the two totals at that point. So we traditionally haven't had to do too much of that stuff in recent years because most of our, as you'll see as we go through this, a lot of these increases tend to be statutory and we don't usually do a lot in discretionary increases. So, but that's it. And then the other thing is that as we proceed through this, the capital improvement plan, which is a separate item in your packets, comes to you as a comprehensive 5-year capital plan. The items for that capital plan in each one of these departments is listed generally in the department's own narrative. So we get all the information on the capital plan and discuss then, and if we have any issues with capital plans, that's the best time to bring them up. And then the actual, and then we will have a separate hearing though to quickly review and approve the CIP itself. So with that said, we'll kick this off with our first department, and I just have to look at the chart to see which one it is, because unless you guys are already there, but we're going to start with human resources. And Councilor Dibble.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Before we get started in each department, I wonder if we could have just a very brief conversation about the total amount for this budget for this year. And perhaps Dominic from the mayor's office can answer the question, but if I may, through you.
If you want to quickly, I'd rather do most of that when the mayor's here, but if you want to start off with any questions right off the bat, go for it.
Kind of overview before we get into each department, so that we
Sure.
can address each department properly. And yes, I agree with you, I wish the mayor was here, but she'll be here soon. Roughly, what percentage is the school department budget out of here? Because it's broken down and hidden in a lot of places. Not hidden, it's just the way it's convoluted in here. So we have one line item that has the school department, but then there are other avenues as well. So ballpark, what's the rough percentage of the overall budget that is school department?
I wouldn't want to estimate and give you something that's incorrect, but we can try to put together a number that's pretty close to accurate. You're correct that in addition to the school's budget, there's debt payments for school building projects are contained in the debt section of the budget. Costs related to workers' compensation are in the HR budget. There's a transfer out for the Bentley, which is a Salem school, which is not reflected in the school's budget. It's a separate part of the budget. So we can total those all together and give you a better sense of what the total percentage is.
Okay, with that, to follow up, and we're talking about percentages, we've got about I think it's a 3.59, 3.6% increase citywide for this year, but only 1.3% increase on the schools. Now, using this logic, and I don't know what the numbers are, but let's say it's 40% is the school department budget. Maybe it's a third. I don't know what it is, because I can't figure it out in here. I don't have, perhaps you can figure it out, but I can't. I'm having the time to figure it out. So I'm wondering, if you take the schools and their 1.3% increase out of this budget, what is the real increase to all the rest of the city departments combined? If it's 3.59 with the schools, then it might be a 6% increase without the schools? I don't know, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to speculate on it.
Well, I'll point out a couple of things to the numbers on it too. One thing that we do that affects our budget differently from, for instance, across the bridge in Beverly, is that here in Salem, our enterprise funds for water, sewer, and trash are included in the general budget, whereas in Beverly, they're separate budget items entirely. And we have more of an increase in those budgets this year with the water sewer side than we do in most years.
That's a
Although
whole-
last year we had a 0 increase.
Yeah, that's a whole another
So-
number, separate number.
No, well, no, in our budget though, it's not, that counts towards the overall budget, whereas it doesn't count over the bridge in Beverly. So we have a larger, can't tell you what the exact percentage is, but we have a larger increase in water sewer than we normally would have in most years. And again, I'm sure the mayor can go into this in much more detail once she gets here, and we can have that discussion in detail at that point, but,
To follow up on that, so my question is, on this whole reasoning, if the overall, excluding school department, the overall increase is somewhere 5 or 6%, not counting schools, why is that increase so large? That's my question, that's what I'm trying to get to. Why is it so big?
yeah,
I have a lot of people that are complaining about their tax bills are so big, and I'm looking at a 5 or 6% increase, maybe more, I don't know what the number is.
well, again, that's a question best suited for when the mayor's here, but that said, percentage-wise, the largest increase in the budget from what we're getting is the water and sewer side, which is the enterprise funds. That's the largest single increase, and I can't tell you offhand what that contributes to the entire budget number, but that's going to be an important thing to go through as we review all this. And a lot of that money is because we're allocating funds for the bonding that's necessary, that's authorized and necessary for the Canal Street project, for water main replacements, for water tank refurbishment, and a lot of those bills are coming due to pay, which is why the water and sewer increase is so big this year. And also why, because a lot of that was deferred, that's why we held the line last year. So it's definitely questions worth asking, but rather than peppering who we have right now for this, we should wait for that until the mayor's here. But it's definitely worth breaking out as part of this. We should be asking these questions, so.
Where are we going first?
So that we're going first to Human Resources General Administration, Section 11.
Thank you.
And for this, we have, to go through the Human Resources department. We have various things associated with it. Administration, workers' compensation for the city, unemployment and group insurance, and that's all covered. And we have our HR director, Lisa Camerata, here. So first, if we'll start, Lisa, if you want to run us through the year and your estimates and actual money spent and all the rest, we'll go through this.
Sure. So the first section is under just general administration. It talks about our mission statement and why we exist. I talk about my staff. Did you want me to go through this section and we'll just go?
Somewhat, if you can. Mostly because we have two people here who haven't been through any of this before, so.
That's right. Hi. How are you? Good to see you.
Nice to see you.
So it seems like the year has just flown by. I mean, I do say that I think every year when I'm here, but as I was like going over the prior fiscal year when I was putting this together, it really has been a busy year, and we've had a lot of new employees come on board. I think I make a notation there that as of the writing when I did this, we had like 33 new hires. We've got 3 or 4 more before the end of the fiscal year. We've had some turnover for retirements. We've had some people just, fortunately, they had a wonderful experience here in Salem. We're able to sort of parlay that to another municipality, so we hate to lose people, but it is very exciting too that when we do post a position, we garner a lot of applications, which is very exciting, which means, it's out there that this is a really good place to work. That's under our general admin. One thing I did put in my budget, I'll just highlight, I think it's pretty important that you'll notice, is typically in the past, my education line has been a little over $5,000. This year that's been increased to $10,000. Well, it's been increased a little, up to $10,000. And we're looking to sort of, training is key. Whether it's in-house training that we offer, we bring in an outside trainer for even some of the, the things that we sort of take for granted, right? Like Microsoft Excel, that those are usually requirements we have for people coming in the door. But one thing we like to remember is, the technology has changed, there's new things to do. I mean, I just learned about pivot tables the other day. So there's all sorts of things we'd like to train people on. And, some of that we'll do in-house, some we'll bring outside facilitators in. I'm also looking at, we tried to do it a couple of years ago, and it was just really difficult to get off the ground, to be honest with you. In-house was a Spanish conversational workplace type of class, and I think we're going to look at bringing in either perhaps maybe a retired Spanish teacher, someone who taught Spanish at a high school level or even an elementary, just sort of the basics. Can I help you? What are you looking for today? Because I think we're looking at we have a growing population of non-English speaking residents, and we're looking at we have constituents and residents that will come in that are looking for some type of assistance. And if we can just sort of even break down that barrier with, can I help you? En qué puedo le ayudar a usted? Something like that really helps, just sort of break down that barrier. So we're looking at that, and I'll pursue that after, hoping that this budget is approved with this request. We'll look at that right after the fiscal year. What else can I tell you about? We still have some vacancies that are still on the website that we're looking to fill. Again, education is key. It seems like one thing that I do a lot of during the year is health insurance information, which I just think is really important because you'll see it's the biggest piece of my budget. I think the requested amount is a little over $13 million. Health insurance, we insure between employees, retirees, all of our retired teachers, retired city employees, and current employees. We insure 1,700. We have 1,700 subscribers, which is a lot. And so when it is time for open enrollment, it's important to, do an informational session. Go out there right into, whether it's the Council on Aging, we go over to the Park and Rec office, over at the Fire Department, over at the Police Department, to just explain to employees, what they're getting. This year was sort of a whirlwind with the GIC. We thought that, the sky was falling, right? The rates were gonna go, through the roof. All these plans were closed. I mean, you saw what happened right at the first of the year. And as it turned out, nothing happened. All the plans that were supposed to be closed are all now open. We saw decreases in deductibles. We saw our pharmacy benefit carve out so that the rates have actually gone down. So I think that's just important to get those words out to people. Unemployment is part of my budget. We can talk about that when we get to it. That's just something we keep our eye on all the time. And workers' compensation is big as well. That's sort of an overview. I hope, I'm happy to entertain questions too as we go along.
The one question I will kick off with is the, noted going through this, the budget, other than the increase on the core department budget, it's pretty much level with the exception of the, routine in-band salary increases, and a lot of that's collectively bargained. And then, but I saw a collective bargaining reserve And
Yes.
so we put $50,000 into that column, which is really the majority of where that departmental increase is. So if you can explain that, please, for,
Yes, so we are still in negotiations with our AFSCME Local 1818, which is our covers our public service employees as well as our clerical and a majority, about 87 members to that group. And we're looking at that, once we ratify the contract, that will be likely used for that, for any type of retroactive salaries.
okay, and you expect that's enough to cover that beyond it with no other, requests on that, that's enough of a reserve?
Yes, hopefully. I mean, yeah, we've done some of the numbers. It's a smaller group, and just the salaries aren't, they're not, there's different levels of salary, so what is it, just sort of one raise on top of, one amount, one percentage on one blanket amount?
Sure.
It's sort of different levels, so we should be okay, yes.
Okay, any questions from members of the committee? Sure, Councilor Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm wondering if, since this is just the first one we're going through, can you just talk about, like, for example, department and mayor, the difference between, I don't know if we're on the same, 108, page 108. Just like
108, yep.
the last two columns in particular, I'm curious about the
So
difference
the
between
department amount is what the department came in and proposed in the budget process as it was beginning.
Mm-hmm.
The mayor is what the mayor granted. There may be a cut, there may be an increase. If the amount is different from what the department initially proposed, whether it's higher or lower, it gets an asterisk.
Okay. And so the last column is the one that we're considering?
Yeah, the
Okay.
mayor budget is what we are actually considering and voting upon. So
Thank
the budget amount for the Human Resources Department that's under proposal here is the $329,025.
Okay.
Question, Councilor Flynn?
Yeah, through the chair. With your budget from last year going to this year, was there any carryover, or was everything pretty much going to equal out right on July 1st for you?
Yeah, we're right at the edge there on a lot of our lines, yes. We'll encumber, we'll probably encumber for workers, for unemployment, because that bill gets a following month, we'll encumber that. I think I understand your question. So, we level fund, we just sort of, I kind of moved some of my lines around this year where I saw that I was gonna need more probably moving forward, that kind of thing. Like with our purchase for services, and we moved that around, I cut my office supplies so I could put a little more money up in one of the other lines. We're right up to the edge.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Councilor Dibble?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not having the numbers that we talked about before we got into this department, I'm uncomfortable approving any one department because I'm looking at the total percentage of an increase, which is X, we don't know what it is, but it might be 5 or 6% citywide. How do we approve one budget, one department, when we might be looking to cut all of the other departments? So I'm uncomfortable doing that.
I would say that you would you should, regardless of your feelings on the total budget total, if you see things you want to cut on a departmental basis, you should be proposing them on a departmental basis. That's the place to do it. There's no, we can't and shouldn't we can't do a magic, okay, we need to cut the entire budget by X amount. In terms of planning this, and again, this is something that perhaps in the, in the mayor's greater narrative, once she gets here, we can go into this somewhat, but in general, the budgets that we do here tend to be fairly conservative in that regard.
Sure, I understand.
And-
I think, Mr. Chair, we can absolutely cut the budget citywide. We don't have to go line item budget reductions only. We can go citywide and say to the mayor, let's cut the budget by 0.5% more, or 1% more, or 2% more, whatever is the will of the body. We can certainly do that. We can cut this budget 1%, or we can put a number on that and have the mayor figure out where she would like to cut that X amount. That can be done.
Well, if that's, if that's a statement that you'd like to make, and if there's the support for it within the committee, then you can, then you can propose accordingly. I would recommend that we continue with our usual approach, which is to scrutinize it on a departmental basis.
Yep.
And
So
You
with
can never
that,
make those calls.
with that and your comments about addressing one department at a time, I'll do that with 3 points on here, if I may. The $50,000 for collective bargaining reserve, that's more than the previous 5 years combined by far. I'm not sure why there's a need to have that in there when it wasn't in there over the last 5 or 6 years or longer.
Well, can I go, or you want to go?
I mean, it's $144 5 years ago and zero for the next 4 years. Why are
So
we,
that first column is the
that's the
expenditures
expenditures.
of FY17, so that was
That
last
wasn't 5
year's
years ago,
fiscal
yeah.
year. That was not 5 years ago.
I'm sorry.
And
You're right.
actually, excuse me, I can actually answer. No, you know what, this amount, you're right, that was from 2 prior fiscal years. And there was an expense off of that, but that didn't represent, I don't believe we were out of contract as we are now.
Right, but we don't know what that amount will be until we negotiate.
Well, that's true.
So if we say
So-
$50,000 now, you're putting the cards on the table in your negotiations, saying, hey, we got $50,000, then magically that would be the number, 50,000. But if the number was zero, then the negotiations would be tighter. Could be tighter, I don't know. If you could speak to that.
Well, I mean, I can speak to the fact that this is what we put aside. It could be more. I mean, but we're hoping, that at least this is part for our AFSCME group, as I said. We're also out of contract with our police patrol.
Can I also add
Yeah.
the 5% figure? So the budget increase is 3.6%. And the mayor's cover letter indicates slightly more than half, about 55% of that is fixed cost increase. To your question about what those costs increases are.
46% is
So,
not fixed.
And 46% are costs that are based on increased services that the city's intending to provide, pay increases for employees, including union employees, police, fire, and teachers. The fixed costs include things like our GIC, Medicare, snow and ice debt, construction debt for projects. So to speak to your earlier question, the budget increase is not 5%, it's 3.6%. And I wouldn't want to speculate on what it would be if we pulled out certain departments and just calculated the other departments.
That,
Happy to get that number for you, but
well,
it's not 5%.
You're right, it's 3.59%, so 3.6% citywide with 1.3 for the schools, plus the other hidden parts that are buried in here somewhere, not directly part of the budget that we're speaking to. We're rehashing what we talked about before we got into this one department. But again, the question is, what is the percentage increase of all the departments less the schools? And the school being the biggest chunk, out of the biggest piece of this whole list. We can't get that answer yet till the mayor gets here, I guess, but.
I don't know if she's gonna be able to do that math for you either. Like
Yeah,
I
I
said,
don't
we're happy
know.
to go back and pull out the various sections.
Oh, Nina.
Go to page 46 of section 3, there's a breakdown of the general and enterprise funds. And there's a breakdown of city total with a percentage of increase, there's education total with an education increase, and the total general fund with the percentages are all listed there, broken down. And I can tell you that the school is 40% of the city's budget, general fund budget, not including water, sewer, and trash. And you can see on this exactly what the percentage increases are.
Page,
So you can see that.
Section 3 overall, not department section 3, but
No, section 3 of the budget, page 46, which is your operating budget for 19. And you can see that debt service is actually the largest increase, well, one of the largest, 17.9%.
I don't have a page 46 of section 3.
it's,
It's in the section that's called Budget
front.
Overview, all
I'm in the
funds.
front,
So
3 at the front.
section 3.
under the,
It's behind this greenish tab.
Yep.
It's a back page too.
Section 3, my section goes, I have no section 3. It goes from tab 3 to tab 4 with nothing in between.
No, you don't.
There's no section 3. That's how I got through that section really fast.
Sorry about that. I will give you a copy of that. I actually have an extra copy upstairs. Let me give you that.
You sure?
Okay, I can run upstairs and get you one.
Hey, I have a copy now. Sorry about that.
Counselor Peterson?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. I kind of related to the words of Counselor's original question. How, and I'm hearkening back to when you were talking about people being, moving to other municipalities. Can you speak to just in general, do you feel like we are paying people at a competitive level compared to surrounding municipalities, or if we're below or above?
Oh, that's a really good question. I have to tell you, that's a very good question. On some levels, we're right where we need to be, and sometimes we're not. And, you know, I just did an exit interview with a gentleman that's leaving us. He's been here with us for a year, and he's leaving to go, and he's probably going to make $17,000 more. So sometimes we're not. Sometimes we are, sometimes we're not. You know, and that's why we do a salary survey, to try to see where we are. And I think that's sometimes what's reflected in some of the increases that are proposed, so we can still attract, you know, qualified people, because at the end of the day, that's what we really want. We don't want to lose them.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
So any other members have questions for Human Resources? Counselor Milo?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not being a member of the committee, and I'm going to stay away from the numbers, but I'm looking at the narrative piece of this.
Okay?
So I'm going to start on page 105. One of the bullets for accomplishments. It's the second to the last bullet, implemented performative exercises as part of the interview process. What is that?
It's very exciting. So in our effort to hire good, qualified people for the positions that we're filling, we will actually, you know, sort of assess the skill set. So once we get down to somebody that we want, that we're looking at, we say, you know, it's contingent, we'll do a conditional offer, and we have that person come in and either maybe go through a couple of purchase orders, maybe put together an Excel spreadsheet for us, or do a tally, maybe do a letter. Over in the Department of Public Services, we've actually had, you know, some of our candidates for a heavy motor equipment operator, where a CDL license is required, make sure that he or she, because we actually have a female in that group now, can operate, you know, the backhoe, or, you know, if it's a snowy season, hopefully see if you can plow. I mean, you know, there's a lot from what's on paper to what we're actually getting at times. It's happened to us in the past, and so we figured this was a good way, and actually with the mayor, part of the mayor's initiative as well, with even department heads. We've had presentations. You know, when we hired our Park and Rec program assistant, we were down to a couple of finalists, and they put together a program, assuming like money was no option, what would you do, what would you run, and why? And that sort of just shows you, you know, it sort of helps, you know, that phrase we've used, the cream rise to the top, and you'd be surprised, you know, we're doing someone a disservice, I think, if we hire someone who doesn't have the skills that he or she says that they have on paper, to put someone in a position where they can't succeed. It just does nothing for the department's morale or the person, so it's really helpful to sort of assess those skills and help us pick the right person.
So that's after the offer and before the hire? Is that what you're
Yeah, so
saying?
well, it's actually part of the interview process. So we've gotten down to the finalists, and I think, I'm trying to think what departments we did it in. We'll do like a scenario type situation. If we're down to 2 finalists, you know, 3 different scenarios for, you know, how would you handle, you know, what's your most difficult customer service experience, and how did you handle it? Or, you know, here's our purchase order and here's a batch, can you find the errors? You know, so like a purchase order needs to match, the numbers in the PO need to match the batch, need to match the vendor, need to match the date, and all of those things go down to, you know, someone's ability to pay attention to detail and their ability to, you know, do the whole task all the way through. And so then what we'll do is, you know, we'll determine who has done the best on that. We've used it in-house even with some of our local AFSCME positions. We've done it in-house to sort of see which candidate was most qualified for the job.
Thank you. I just have a couple
Yeah,
more.
no, go ahead. I'll just let the record reflect that Councilor Medora is also with us from the Committee of the Whole.
And if I could just add, it's actually, I think our candidates like it because it really gives them a chance to show us that they can do the job. It's worked out really well.
Yeah, well, it sounds like a good way to distinguish if
Yeah.
all things are equal or all people are equal.
And that's the thing. You know, you
Yeah.
might come down to a couple of finalists, it's like, well, let's see who does, you know, better, who,
Yeah.
you know, it's really worked out well.
Good.
Yeah.
Is each department responsible for their own organizational structure? And does each department have an organizational structure? Like,
So it's very funny that you're just bringing that up, because we have a program in Munis that we just got trained on. I did actually, and we have org chart capabilities right within our Munis system. And so we are working on that. So I've actually gotten the information from most of the department heads. Most we had, I mean, I pretty much know who reports to whom. So we're plugging that in and we're doing org charts for each department. And then as soon as we're done with that, I'm gonna pass them out and let departments sort of make sure that they're accurate. Because they're actually gonna become really useful when we do the pay equity exercise. Because we need to do an org chart and job description so we can make sure that we're in compliance with the pay equity law. But so the short answer is, yes, they're available. I mean, I didn't, you know, I only have 4 or 5 people in my department, so I mean, I could do it quickly.
Yeah.
But for the bigger departments, like Department of Public Services, you know, the police and the fire, you know, you've got chains of command in there. So those are almost done. And so, I mean, you know, you're welcome, there'll be public record, obviously, I'd be happy to give them to you. And then we'll use those, like I said, for pay equity, and then if somebody leaves, we'll just plug the new person in. And then we can, you know, sometimes just a visual is really helpful to look at the bubbles and see who's where and where our deficiencies are, so, yes.
and I noticed that department heads are gonna be trained on reviews, internal reviews?
Yes, so we've talked about performance assessments, some of our groups like to call them, yeah, it's still a work in progress, but we should be rolling that out probably by the end of the summer, hopefully, but definitely by the end of this calendar year. But we're bringing, Maya actually offers training. Maya we have insurance for everything with Maya, and part of one of their training modules under the EAP, the Employee Assistance Program, but they offer all types of training. And one is actually how to conduct performance evaluations and appraisals and assessments. And so that, you know, everybody's on the same page with that. I mean, that way one department doesn't do it one way, one doesn't sort of do
Right.
it the way he or she thinks or whatever. And, you know, it's really just to have a conversation. I mean, we've talked about this before too. It's really just to open up a dialogue so that, you know, what's happening? What are you looking to do? You want to grow here? Is this something you want to stay? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? It's not really tied to pay or discipline. We've made it that way just so it sort of opens up that door.
Well, you can probably help to create career ladders for people too.
Yes.
Which I think is important.
Yes.
And I just have one final question. The exit interviews,
Yes.
what do we do with that information?
So, well, no, it's actually a really good question. So most of the conversations I've had with people that are leaving have been usually some for retirement, and like the one I did the other day, I mean, very, very happy to be here, but had an opportunity. You know, I talk about the structure in the department, you know, what could we have done maybe to keep you, you know, you've been a great fit. You know, we talk about salary, we see how, you know, how comfortable somebody's been with our benefits. I can tell you the overall that I hear is people are very happy here. They have been very happy here, and, you know, except, you know, our assistant engineer, in fact, who's been with us for a while, well, less than a year, I think, extremely happy. You know, he was so good that he was handpicked to go someplace else, which was, you know, exciting for him, unfortunate for us. But, yeah, and I mean, if something is, you know, a sort of a red flag, then I definitely talk to the department head and say, you know, we need to talk about A, B, C, or D. But usually it's just, you know, I've had some constructive criticism that I've spoken to the department heads about, but it's just to sort of get an idea of where they're at and what could we have done, and, you know, sort of wish them well. 'Cause it's a hard decision sometimes. I mean, I've had a few people come in that were, you know, very excited about a new opportunity, but it's a big decision when you're invested here.
Thank you.
Any
Welcome.
other questions? Councilor Dibble.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Back to the $50,000 on collective bargaining reserve, wouldn't it make more sense, rather than put it into human resources where it doesn't fit your department, wouldn't it make more sense to put it into the different departments either now or later with an appropriation? So that we have a true understanding of what that department costs? Because the $50,000 isn't benefiting your department at all. Not hurting or helping, it's in the wrong place.
I mean, it's a placeholder for it. I mean, I suppose we could put it in a different department, but especially where, if it's gonna go to the, as I think it will, or at least part of it anyway, to the AFSCME negotiation and the settlement and any type of, you know, any retroactive salary or any moving forward, You know, you couldn't put, you know, you don't know how much that's gonna be for each department, because some departments have 5 or 6 different AFSCME employees at different salary levels, and to sort of project that with step increases and that sort of thing, I think it's better to have a placeholder in one department. My department, at the end of the day, is actually the gatekeeper for it anyway, to make sure it's correct before it goes through to payroll, so it sort of makes sense being there as a placeholder.
But it has not been there for several years, or maybe ever, I'm not sure.
When was the last?
Actually, it has been.
It has been. When was the last collective bargaining?
Nina?
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, so usually what happens is the money gets appropriated in the HR budget, and then as contracts are settled, we come to council and ask the council to transfer money to the individual budgets as appropriate once the contract has been settled and we know exactly what the amounts are for each department. So then we do a budget transfer out of Lisa's budget into the individual departments. That's why you see zeros there, because we've always transferred the money out. So it's a zero budget transfers out at that point.
So to follow up on that, the appropriation is always in the budget, or do we go to the city council later and ask for that collective bargaining amount?
Well, it
The
also
appropriation's there when
depends,
we
too.
have negotiations.
Yeah, it depends if the contracts have been settled. I mean, obviously, if the contracts have been settled, the money's in the appropriate budget, but where we're in the middle of a negotiation, we don't know what to appropriate, so they would put it here as kind of a little placeholder, and once it's settled, then we can come to council and say, okay, we need X amount for the assessor's office and the collector's office, and we go down, and we'll actually submit a council order for each department and exactly what money needs to be transferred into each department.
And we usually have a placeholder, because I have not seen it in 3 years that I've been on ANF.
Well, we just, what do you think? We've settled, when was the last time we settled? It was about 3 years ago.
Right.
So that's probably why, because we settled 3 years ago, we haven't settled since then.
So-
That's probably why you haven't seen one.
So this is the practice in prior years before this?
Yes.
Okay,
I've
thank
seen
you.
this a couple of times.
All right, thank you.
I don't know if it's been the same amount each time, but I can't recall that, but I've seen it a couple of times, having been on since 2012.
Yep. Lisa, you started talking about the services briefly, but you've got 2 lines here, one for purchase of services and one for contracted services. What's the difference, and why are they 2 different line items? And
So-
what are they?
Sure, so under purchase of services,
8110.
I'm sorry?
If you look at 8110, it explains them.
It sort of explains it further, but I'm happy to expand on it a little further. But yeah, 8-110 just itemizes under purchase of services. So we do pre-employment physicals for all of our employees, before people are hired, to make sure that, you know, the essential functions, whether it's lift up to 30 pounds or sit for an extended period of time or that sort of thing. And that comes with a cost. Those are $90 a piece. And we also do the DOT, we do a drug test for our CDL drivers before they're hired, so that's also in addition to that. We also, under that comes our custom drug testing, which is our random testing for anyone who has a CDL license. For all of our drivers, that's random. There's a drug and alcohol test that comes under that. And we also do some shredding services with Heritage Industries. That's really minimal. But I would say a lot of the money, especially this fiscal year, because we've had a lot of new hires, so that involves pre-employment physicals for all of them. And the custom drug testing is, I think it's quarterly, maybe a little, yeah, it's quarterly, where that can cost anywhere from $300 to $400 at a time. Under contracted services, that's basically our uniforms. We have a contract with Aramark, and that is the service for the weekly uniforms, as I have on there for the city employees that are required to wear them. And so you see our, in the public services department, they're all in, you know, the gray shirts with the city emblem on them, or like in our motor pool, we make sure that they're wearing the flame retardant clothing so that they can't, you know, get hurt. And there's a service with that, so each employee has, I believe it's 11 pairs of pants and 11 shirts and 2 jackets to get them through, so that while there's a crossover with one, then the following week those are taken out and replaced.
Following week they're replaced?
No, well, they have 2 sets, so it's every week.
Yes.
So they wear one, they take one. They wear one, they get a clean one. That sort of.
So we clean them for them?
Well, yeah, I mean, especially, some of them, especially with the ones in the motor pool, I mean, they're covered in grease. I mean, it's part of the service, and that way they come back, if anything gets ripped or torn, we're covered for that, so we'll get a new one in its place.
And the $10,000 for educational training, that's a big jump. For several years, it didn't even come close to totaling 10,000.
That's true. So in addition to, like I said, I wanted to bring on a professional to come in and sort of do some conversational Spanish, but the other thing is, we have been, in fact, I'm meeting with the Department of Public Services Director tomorrow, and Ray Joden met with Sean McCray this morning. We're looking at our overall licensure requirements in with our Department of Public Services, because a lot of things have changed. You know, the CDL-AB, and we're looking at increase, you know, some of our equipment that we have actually now requires licenses that we haven't required in the past. So that's gonna come at a cost, because we're gonna need to have people become licensed, and then we're gonna wanna maintain those licenses, and so there are fees associated with that. And we're working out the cost. I mean, some of them are, you know, $175 for the first time, and then there's an upkeep for either $50 every 2 years, that sort of thing. But these licenses are valuable to us, because, you know, we have the overhead crane down at the motor pool. I mean, I've learned a lot about the HB 1, 2, 3, and 4. I mean, it's pretty amazing what's out there. I mean, even a licensure you need, that our staff needs to just test drive the school bus when they're fixing it. I mean, and these are endorsements that we need to have, tanker endorsements, and these will come at a cost. Plus, it may also come at a cost, you know, like I said, to keep that up. So that's what we're looking at.
Your explanations are so good that it's making it difficult to find places to cut.
Wow, well, thank you, Counselor.
Counselor Flynn?
Through the chair, on that 50,000 for the collective bargaining.
Yep.
That the Good Ward 7 Council was talking about, what would happen if you don't settle with AFSCME and the police patrolman? What would happen to that 50? Would that carry over, or that line be left alone for another year? If it went to arbitration or whatever, you know what I mean, what would happen?
Well, I mean, that's its intended use. So if those two things don't happen, which I sincerely hope that doesn't follow and shake out that way, I really do hope we settle. I'd have to defer to the finance director, because I don't know. I'm sorry.
Just turn over and would close out at the end of the year to the general fund.
Yeah, we go back to free cash.
So it
And-
wouldn't be transferred, you know what I mean, through a council vote to another line or
No.
during the year? if
No,
you don't use
any,
it?
money that's not expended in a department goes into free cash at the end of the year, and that's one of the things that keeps our, you know, we do try and save when possible during the year, and that's one of the things that brings our free cash up, and also if collections exceed, you know, forecast. And then that free cash goes into pretty much reducing the tax rate as much as possible on the next year's budget. The other thing that happens with that would mean, though, let's say this $50,000 is allocated this year, and then the contracts are not settled during the fiscal year, and instead are carried over, and we're looking at fiscal 20 next year. They'd have to do the allocation again, but this one, having not been used, would be turned over to free cash.
So, Mr. Chair,
Councilor Dibble.
thank you. Isn't there already money in each of the departments for anticipated raises?
Well,
those would be for-
contracts.
Right, those
Yes.
would be for, I'm sorry. Can I answer?
For contracts that are not yet settled, there isn't.
There is not.
Yeah,
So-
for contracts that are still open.
So if I were to look up a given contract, it would be the same as the previous year then, is that correct?
Yes, I'm sorry. Oh, can I just
No,
answer?
go
Just
ahead.
assuming if there's a step increase for somebody, so say perhaps somebody's anniversary is, you know, they were hired in August. So that person that is budgeted for step 2 come August of 2018, but there's no projected raise in there because we don't know what that is.
Whatever the current step increase
Right,
would
and
be
that's
in
all
there.
at that current level, that's correct.
But contractual raises would not be covered, any contractual raise amounts would not be covered by their only step increases.
So this budget would show that one line item being the same as the previous year?
I'd have to defer on the answer to someone who knows more.
I
in this
mean, it
case.
should.
So contracts that have settled, fire, settled.
Police superiors.
Settled. So what you're not gonna see is increases for AFSCME, so the clerk, so for example, in the licensing department, we have one AFSCME employee, so her salary should be the same. And who else hasn't settled, just police patrol?
Police patrol.
and AFSCME.
But you'll notice those salary lines are going up too, only because there is a non-union increase in there. So that's why you see that they are up slightly every department, because there's a 2% increase for management and non-union folks.
And people with their contracts settled have the
And people
appropriate
with
amount.
Contract settlement, correct.
So for instance, teachers are settled right now. That's not an open negotiation right now, so whatever is in the teacher's side, that would take care of it. Any other questions?
Oh, let me ask, who's good at math in this room?
Guess that's me.
Okay. If I may, through you, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
So we just heard that the school department budget is roughly 40%, and it's 3.59% increase citywide, and the school's increase is only 1.3%. What is the percent increase in the rest of the departments, with the schools being 40%?
In the rest of the departments, well,
Yes.
on 346, if you look at the city total that's above the educational total, you'll see it's 5.08% increase. The school is actually a 0.97% increase. And then overall, when you factor in city and school, it's a 3.41% increase. And you can see what each category percentage of increase is on that page as well.
Okay, maybe, again, I apologize, I haven't studied this section, because I just got it.
I apologize for that not being there.
No, it probably would have answered some of my questions, but it's too much information to digest right now as I sit here. Yep.
You're gonna find that there are big budget items like health insurance, workers' comp, unemployment, debt, where the majority of the expense are attributed to the school department. However, they're not showing up in the school department budget. I can tell you the unemployment is predominantly in the school department, but it shows up, you'll see, it's in the HR budget. So you're missing a lot of those big ticket items, like health insurance and unemployment. and
Yeah,
workers'
excuse me, unemployment is key, and we can talk about that. I just want to add to that. Unemployment is key when we get to that section.
That's why you, and those items, I suspect, have gone up significantly. They have in the past.
So again, I'm just trying to get to what is without the schools being a 1.3% increase, what's the increase to all the other departments?
I think you're gonna have to give
Each one is
some
different.
time to pull that
No,
out.
on total, for all departments
5.8%,
together.
Yes,
not
it's
including water and
5.08.
sewer. It's 5.8%, not including water and sewer.
Actually, is it
5.8%.
5.08?
Oh, wait.
Yeah, 5.08.
I'm sorry.
My question is, can we live with just over a 5% increase?
Most of that's fixed costs though, Counselor. That big portion of that is fixed.
46% is not fixed costs. So 54, you're right, majority is fixed costs, but it's 54% fixed costs.
So the largest drivers looking at this are debt service increase from 6.6 to 7.7. We're looking at a sewer increase from 6.7 to 7.4, actually 7.45, a 10.5% increase there on the sewer side and enterprise funds. And your municipal insurance, although it's a small number, is 6.5%, and your public works increase is 6.5%. And those are your major cost drivers.
Yeah,
General government, which is most of what we're talking about here, outside of you're talking about personnel, regular personnel, non-personnel, not your insurance and unemployment costs and all the like, that's a 4.5% increase as across departments. And your public safety is 2.8.
Mr. Chair, I hope you can
Yeah.
appreciate why I'm doing this.
Sure.
Because there's so many people, especially senior citizens, that are just complaining to me, and probably to all of you as well, that their tax bill is simply too high. It goes up significantly every year. So this being 5% increase for non-school, I'm shocked that it's only 1.3% for the schools. I don't know how you got by with just that small increase. 5% is pretty high. And I'm wondering what we can do specifically to reduce that amount.
Councilor Milo?
If I may, Mr. Chair, we could sit here all night and you know, look at 5,000 here, 10,000 there. And I think the reality is, everything that we do throughout the year comes to fruition here. So if we're looking to cut something, I think we have to think about what our philosophy is through the year when we're taking votes like, do we purchase the Derby Street lot? Do we rent across the street versus buy, or rent somewhere else where it's 25% less per square foot? Do we make, you know, reforms in the school department? And I can't tell you what those particular reforms would be because I don't follow that closely. But I think the truth of the matter is that when we get to this point, it's a lot of what we've done, like I say, is reflected in here. And I know a lot of the costs are fixed costs, but again, I would say that I think it's incumbent upon us as counselors to look at, especially the small numbers, the 5,000, the 10,000 throughout the year when we vote. You know, we just looked at $20,000 for an assessment center. Yes, if we don't need 20,000, we only need 10, it's important to just reduce it to 10,000. But as I said, I'm just gonna say it again, because I don't see any other way for us to really impact the tax rate based on the challenges that we have, other than looking at what we need versus what we want, and always considering that as a question, especially when we take votes on the bigger things. You know, what do we need? What do we want? Is it something that we need, or is it something that we want? And then go from there. You know, we need to fix our infrastructure. We need our roads to be paved. We need our sidewalks to be fixed. Those are the things we need. What we want is another question.
I'd say to that, you know, and I don't disagree with that philosophically. What I will add, though, is that as we go out through the years, we all need to be paying attention to that and deciding whether it's something that we need or something that we want. And remembering that even if we decide that it is something that we need, if it costs more, then they have to come back to us hat in hand. If it costs less, then that money that doesn't get spent goes back into the general fund and becomes free cash that rolls over at the end of the year. So even with the budget issues and priorities that have been hitting us, each year we have been able to make contributions to our rainy day fund, extend free cash, try and take the edge off what our tax rate increase for the following year is. In the past year, for the fiscal year 18, we were able to avoid any water sewer hikes at all, and go a year without them. So after several years of steady increases, some large. And so that's the priorities hit us, and I hear the complaints about the tax bills as well, and I also hear people saying, I want this, I want to build this, I want you to fix this sidewalk, I want you to fix this, to pave this road, I want you to solve this problem, I want to have a park, I want to have this. So it's, you know, obviously now that the mayor's here, she can address some of this stuff with us like she did at the at the budget retreat when we discussed all this beforehand. But basically, we've got to juggle that. And the goal that I think the administration has, and I know that I have to see, is that we get a budget each year that tries to balance those competing forces as best as possible. Keep the tax, because, you know, I pay a fairly hefty tax bill myself on my place, and I don't like to see it go up. It's, you know, in my 25 years of owning the home, it's more than doubled. And I think I'm getting good value for that, but you know, I do like to, you know, scrutinize what's happening on a year-to-year basis to see to it. So, you know, that's just my take on when we are allocating money for these things, we're generally doing it out of free cash and trying to, you know, out of that free cash that we have left over in the pile. So it's usually not too big a thing. I'll just say, Councilor Dibble, if you want to chime in.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you. Mayor, good to see you. We're having just a general discussion, not about this one department, but just general citywide questions on the 40% of the budget approximately is school department. And their increase is about 1.3%. And my questions earlier, before we got into this one department, were in general, what was the amount of increase in the costs in the non-school department collection, if you would? Because I was missing a section, and thankfully I just got it, and I'll review that this weekend. But and I understand the fixed cost, 54%, the flexible costs, if you want to call them flexible, 46% or so. So a lot of it is, 50% of it's fixed. You can't really do anything with it unless you want to get creative and renegotiate things, which is almost impossible sometimes. But if we do the math and we break it all down, that's just over 5% increase in the non-school departments in total, on average, some higher, some lower, but we're at 5% increase. I hear from so many people, as I'm sure you do too, I hear from so many people that their tax bill just keeps going up, especially seniors, it just keeps going up and up and up, and the complaint is fairly strong. Especially when the tax bills come out. Can we live with 5%, over 5% increase for our non-school departments?
So a couple of things. One, I want to make sure we're doing the math, because the schools are much greater than a 40% increase of our budget, or represent in terms of expenditures. What you see in the school budget itself is personnel, largely personnel and non-personnel, but what you're not seeing are health insurance costs, their share of unemployment. There's a whole other collection of costs related to schools, debt, related to school projects, which we have been, I think, really tried to be very judicious about exercising school repairs. So we're still paying for a lot of that debt, both the last two projects being Collins and Salts, but our schools are in fairly new condition. So I want to make sure we're doing that math. The overall budget's going up less than 4%. And there are pockets of budgets, individual departmental budgets. When we go through it, it's a very transparent process. You can see where you're seeing higher upticks, particularly police, where we talked about during the budget retreat having a wave of retirements and trying to plan for that to make sure we have adequate staffing. So there is a big jump up in personnel. We don't think that's going to be the case long term, but it's a transition period, meaning because folks are retiring, we need to have those folks start now so they can take the nearly year-long process to get through both the academy and in-service training, so they can actually be out on the street. I don't think it'll be a permanent increase to that much, but that's a transition year that we're seeing. We are, certainly trying to be mindful of additional resource needs around sidewalks and aging infrastructure. That's why you're seeing a water and sewer increase this year. It's tied to a lot of the water and sewer work we're doing, which I think we also hear from people. So I'm happy to do some breakdowns to provide a better understanding of where dollars are being spent between school and non-school. We also had an increase in Chapter 70, aid coming in. That's a per capita amount. So some of that might be tied to those increases where those resources are going up. I want to be clear, like the budget to me, I just went through weeks of cutting the budget to give it to you so it would be balanced. There are all kinds of additional requests, many of which I would put in the need category, not in the want category, but they're just not something that I thought we could afford. I mean, I'm trying to take priorities. We talked about some of them during the budget retreat, and then put in place a financing structure to help us afford that. We are still almost $4 million below the levy, about $3.5 million below the levy capacity. That means we are not taxing people at the maximum. It doesn't necessarily make you feel better when you're opening your tax bill, but I point that out to say I think we're really trying to be judicious and not just tax to the max of what we could be every single year. And that's been the case. We've been significantly under the levy since I've been in office, as well as growing our rainy day pool so we can plan effectively if there is catastrophic events, or wanting to make sure we had enough money in our bank to satisfy the bond rating agencies who provide us with our interest rates, and recognizing what our needs are as a community. When the pier needs to be repaired because of a major storm, we want to have resources to do that. So I definitely hear you, trying to do everything we can in terms of being fair to taxpayers. I'm also trying to balance that with the immense needs of a city that's almost 400 years old. I just met with Salem Little League about park and field conditions. I've talked to Councilor Flynn about that, or we exchanged emails anyways. There are service demands. We're a hot city. We're active. If people are paying a tax bill, they want services in response to that. So we're trying to balance that while also being fair, especially for the seniors who are on fixed incomes. We have the highest number of abatement requests, and we offer the highest number of abatement opportunities for seniors. We've upped the tax work-off program. I think there are other strategies that we're talking about on the financial side for us to take a look at that could provide some relief for people who are on a fixed income. But we can't have it both ways. We can't not want development, want to be able to service everything very well, and then also not want to make, I think, modest increases in a budget. You got to tell me which way you want to go. If we want to go completely conservative and start cutting budgets, that's fine, but we need to have that conversation with taxpayers as well, that things aren't going to be done at the level they may want in terms of the service delivery. So it's a balance that we're trying to strike. I think our jobs as both the administration and the counselors are like doing the hard work of going through this hundreds of pages of budgets, asking questions, so that when somebody does come up and say, wow, the budget's really gone up, I can explain to them, where some of those resources are going. We put extra money in public safety. We're fully staffed in the fire department. We were not fully staffed in the fire department. When I first came into office, we were down significantly. So we haven't caught everything up in over 1 year, but we've tried to think about this as both a short game and a long game. And so there are additional resources for infrastructure here. There are additional resources for public services. We're doing some reorg within Public Works to try and recognize all of the needs we have there between open space, parks, streets, sidewalks, cemeteries, trees. There's an uptick in here for trees as a result of requests that we've had and a demand. So I got a long list of things we did fund, and cuts that we made that departments asked for that I did not think were unreasonable, but someone's got to say no. And this is what we've delivered to you, and happy to talk through every single budget request. But I will get you the additional information. I do not think you're going to see a disparity on that percentage on general government between schools. I think it's going to look a little
I was just using your numbers from the budget here. And
yeah, it's just not, the school budget number doesn't reflect health insurance, retirement, because the budgets are separated.
I
so.
agree. We
But-
talked about that earlier.
Yeah.
It's really hard to figure out what the
Yep.
true cost of schools are in the budget.
Well, I'm
For
happy
me,
to
it
get you
is,
that, yeah.
Because I'm not.
We know
honest.
what it is. It's a heck of a lot more than 40% of our budget. And by the way, I'm glad about that. It's a reflection of the fact that education's our number one priority. We should be, making sure that we have adequate resources to meet the demands of the students within our Salem Public Schools.
So if you can help have somebody put pen to paper for a few minutes and figure out what.
Yeah,
that-
if Lori was here, I'm sure she'd have that,
do
but
pretty
we'll
fast, I
definitely
bet.
follow up with you, Counselor.
Then we can know what the non-school increase actually is.
Yep.
And then we'll have discussion tomorrow at our next meeting. Is it justifiable? Can I ask, is it safe to say back to the public that the budget that we have now, you have reduced the amount from pretty much every department? At what amount were we at, and how much did you reduce to get to
Yeah.
this?
It's definitely
Ballpark
not
numbers.
safe to say we reduced it from every department, because there are some requests that we agreed to. So you'll see an uptick in police department, but I think we've been we haven't spared many. I'm looking, Lori and Dominic and myself and Beth Renard spent a lot of time plowing through numbers. And Nina and finance team really trying to hone in on. I don't know if it's fair to say every single budget was reduced, but the
How about
vast
a-
majority were.
How about a ballpark total for all the departments combined? How much did we reduce it by?
So, I mean, when we first started this process, there was a $2 million gap. Some of that's about what are the revenues we're getting from the state? Do we have those final numbers? Where are they at? So we've made significant cuts.
So about 2 million was taken down to this point,
Well,
roughly.
it's not necessarily all cuts, because we're also looking at what the revenue is. So if we had a revenue projection on the governor's budget that changed, revenues went up slightly through the legislature, that would help close the gap as well. So between revenues and cuts, we've had to really make a lot of reductions.
Okay, if you can answer for the next meeting, roughly how much did we cut out of this
Yeah.
budget to get to this point?
Yeah, sure.
The department request column in each
Yes.
department's budget will show you the individual departments, but
Every single budget will say what the department requested, what I'm recommending, so you can see it in real time as well. But we can tally that up.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on the HR budget?
Hold on one second, if I can flip the page.
Sure. It was 8108 that we started with.
If through you, Mr. Chair. Lisa, if we could, and if we wanted to, where could we cut from your budget? Well, I mean, there's things that you want, things that you need. Forget the things that you need, some of the wants, is it possible to cut any of the wants?
Under my expense line?
No, the whole budget.
Before, Counselor Milo?
Mr. Chair, if I can add a piece to that question, because I think we probably need to have that be a two-part question. I think the cut and the impact, because sometimes you cut and the impact is greater than the cut, so I think,
Well, if the impact is so
That's-
strong, then it's really a need.
yeah, yeah. And that might be one of those performative exercises that you, I'm just kidding.
No, I don't. Those don't cost us
I would say
anything.
The
Good
budget
joke,
that's
huh?
been submitted is the budget that we think the department needs.
Yeah.
So, you know, I understand what you're trying to ask. Where would you cut this budget if you could? I think we've asked those questions as well. It's personnel. What you're cutting for the most part, if you want to make a significant impact, is you're gonna cut people, bodies, because those are where the big costs are. This is not a budget. I mean, unemployment, we base that based on what the unemployment costs are. Workers' comp is based on what that actually cost us on an annual basis. So if you cut those items, we're gonna have to come back in the spring. And frankly, that's the way budgets were done before we took office. We do not wanna go back to that. You have a budget before you that's real, that we think is what we need. And when we come back, by the way, I really task our department heads. What are we back for in May? I don't like it when we come back to ask for money because we had more workers' comp needs, or, you know, retiree medical insurance was higher. Some of the stuff, it's really hard to predict. And so, and some of the times I'm asking our department heads and really challenging them to use what they have as effectively as they can. But what you have is what this department needs or would not have been submitted to you, Counselor. If you want to make cuts in a budget, it would have to be really in personnel, and I would not recommend that. This is not a big department in terms of staffing. They are managing human resources, both recruitment, benefits, for the entire city. That's both schools do have an HR person that works primarily on the recruitment side of the house, but a lot of the benefits we're responsible for still, even though we're in the GIC. So they provide the insurance, as we found out, but you really do the work in terms of managing a lot of that process still. So I just want to be clear, we think this is the budget that's necessary for departments, or we wouldn't have submitted them.
Any other questions, follow up on that?
Yeah, on the education training line item, it was requested at 5,800, but now we're asking for 10,000. Is that something that you live with at 5,800 and reduce this budget by 4,200?
I'm sorry, I know we talked about this before, but now I don't understand your question, I'm sorry.
The educational training, you requested 5,800 on that item, and the mayor increased it by $4,200 more.
That's correct.
Is that something of a want or a need? Can your department live without that additional 4,200?
So I would suggest, and we can certainly talk about this, but I mean, education is really important to us. It's really important, you know, as I mentioned, the Department of Public Services and the licensure that we're looking at, and the increase in licenses and the value of that, and having people trained properly. As I said, I mentioned, you know, I want to bring in training for, you know, outside classes like Excel, some advanced Microsoft Word. We talked about those pivot tables, you know, all the technology is changing, and I want to help our staff, you know, citywide sort of embrace that and be able to use that. And then I think that the Spanish conversation class that I mentioned earlier, I think is important, and that's also part of this.
Counselor,
It's just a big jump.
yeah, Counselor Flynn, then Counselor Milo.
Through the chair, I think the budget on this, it looks a little inflated because of that $50,000, so it's a little, when you look at that, you see the 22.95%. And I understand how you explain that. Do you have the figure that if that 50,000 wasn't there, just so I know the personnel, what would the actual increase be for your department for the personnel? Because that 50,000 isn't going to you, obviously, it's going for
reserved.
collective
So-
department. Just so I get that number if someone asks, because someone might say, you know, 22.9, you know, that, but it's not really that
Right.
in essence.
It would be 243,375.
Just take 50 off of that.
Because it's just a line item in
No,
there.
no, I understand. What percentage would it be? Do you have the math on that? What percentage is the personnel going up for your department for this year, or the request?
I don't, but we have calculators right here.
You should
And just if
get
I
that
could,
with a calculator.
and I do want to go back to the education piece in a second, as soon as we're done with that.
Okay.
Please.
Well, go right ahead.
keep
while
it
we're
as
there.
it is, Matt.
We also offer tuition reimbursement. So we offer up to $1,500 per fiscal year, which would come out of this, for an employee with department head approval, a class that's related, or if someone's furthering their education. We also have that as part of our AFSCME contract as well. There's $1,000 per fiscal year for someone who is looking to advance him or herself in some type of education. And we have, money comes out of that line for that as well. So not only what we're looking to do, it's still part of our existing.
So I'll just mention quickly before I take anybody else, looking at the adopted budget from 2018 versus the adjustment, which has some overtime charge costs into it, you would have been looking without that collective bargaining reserve at a $5,000 increase
Right,
from
what's the
2018 to
percentage, you know what I'm
2019.
saying? What's
Yeah, we're running it, go ahead.
Yeah, 5,000 in there, about
It's a 2% increase.
about 2?
just your salary increases at that point.
Yeah, Nita, you're right there, thank you.
I said,
Figured it was gonna come out about that.
That's something that I can pass on to people if they do question me, that in
I
reality,
understand.
2%, which is obviously within reason, incorrect.
And as you go forward, you'll see some departments that have reductions as well.
No, I understand that. That's, like I said, 22.95% isn't really what it is because of that money for collective
Yeah, the collective
And I
bargaining.
think that's something that should be pointed out too, so people can understand that. Thank you.
So, Councilor Milo, Councilor Peterson, you have had questions?
Not a question, but just a follow-up, and I can appreciate the Ward 7 counselors' efforts to try to save the taxpayers' money, but I think in kind of piggybacking onto my suggested question about reduction and impact, and knowing that some of this education money goes to training for licensing, I think we also have to remember that we are subject to a number of regulations, and especially when you talk about DPW, there are a lot more licensures and regulations now than there were, even 5 years ago. I would not want to see us skimping on any of that, and putting the city at risk, for liability, because I think that's I'd rather spend $5,000 now to save, $100,000 suit later, so I think that's a piece of the conversation too.
Fair point. Councilor Peterson?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. This is just a clarifying question about the process. So this is the budget that's been submitted to us from this department, and it's broken out into these categories. As Lisa operates throughout the year, does she have to operate within these categories?
Yes.
And if she goes over in this line item, does she have to come back to us, or can she pull from other categories
So-
to make an overall number?
I'll explain this, and if somebody wants to go, into more detail, that's welcome. But basically, within the personnel and the expenses, she can spend that as necessary in general.
Okay.
So she could, if she had an employee leave and needed to pay a part-timer, for instance, more money, she could take the money out of the full-time and give it into the part-time. Within human personnel budget, she can spend that as she sees fit generally. Same thing within the expense side, but this is to mainly give us an accurate view of what their projected costs and expenses are for the year.
Just to clarify that a little bit further.
Yeah.
So personnel and non-personnel are the two separate categories. So if we wanted to move something from personnel to non-personnel or non-personnel to personnel, it has to be approved by the city council. If you
Yes.
want to move items within personnel or within non-personnel, that just requires approval of the finance director and the mayor. So,
Yeah,
and
and
I
we
believe
see
that's
that
set by
routinely.
statute, so that's the way that.
And we see that routinely at city council meetings, for instance, because contracted services is an expenses. So we've done this with several departments over the last few months. We've had personnel leave and have not put a replacement in place immediately, or instead hired a temp or used a service to do it. Then it comes to us to authorize that transfer from personnel to non-personnel, or vice versa. When we've wanted to hire an employee in the place of places where we had previously been using a contracted service provider, that would then be a transfer from expenses to personnel, and that would be that comes through the city council for authorization. Any other questions? Councilor Madore?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So the education and training line item, can you help me understand how you distinguish between expenses that are made through you as part of education and training and expenses are made through other departments? Because I noticed there are other departments that have the same line item. So why is that not rolled into HR?
So,
specifically?
out of this line, this would pay for if we brought a trainer in that wasn't perhaps free, through Maya, or if we brought somebody from Quadrant Health Strategies, that we'd pay for that. It would also be for, tuition reimbursement comes out of this line.
All tuition reimbursements, regardless of type of program?
Well, sorry, did you want to? No.
Tuition reimbursement
Reimbursements.
has to be related to your job, so
Yes.
we're not
Right,
paying
but
for anything.
no,
Right.
so I might be,
If you want to get a degree in basket weaving, you have to be a basket weaver for the city.
Right.
no, I understand. So for example, I think for planning in particular, I think I noticed there was a line item for like, the CPTC, the citizen planning training, dues
Those would
and
be for
fees.
board members typically, for commission members, and we obviously can talk about that when Tom's here. So that would not necessarily be staff related.
Right.
We also do provide some reimbursement for AICP certifications. That's a specific certification that a planner might have. So you might see that in an individual budget. This would be more group planning efforts. I think in the past, we've also done some training out of, for Munis or for some of our IT or web-based training, things like that as well would be like group-based training coming out of this effort.
These are non-department specific training, so Munis training would be apply for multiple employees
Right.
across departments that all use Munis, for example. Conversational Spanish would apply to multiple departments that interact with
Okay.
members of the public who may not speak English as fluently.
So it's kind of like a general training fund.
Yes.
Okay.
What we've also noticed is, particularly when we're trying to hire from within, there's certain skill sets that we know we need to build up more often. So we may have a training focused on Excel, as you mentioned, or a specific task that we know is needed in positions that we know are going to be having, that we're going to be having open. And we want, frankly, we want to hire from within and have staff, be able to perform these tasks, particularly if they're folks who are bumping up from a junior clerk to a principal clerk or an administrative level. But the skill sets aren't always available. It's super helpful for us to have people, embracing technology, whether it's a Munis upgrade that's tied to another program that operates with Munis. So it gives some flexibility as we're going throughout the year to figure out, when do we need some additional training? Even in-house activities, we're looking at, improving our process around procurement and some of the, the ways we do vendor procurement. And that is a group training effort. Some of that we're doing in-house, of course, but there are times when we want to bring in some external expertise, and this funding is a source of it. For the, there's 500 city employees, not including schools. It's a pretty small sum in some ways to help provide some level of additional training expertise.
Oh, Councilor Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, just a clarifying question on the continuing education reimbursement piece. I'm assuming that is not very well taken advantage of since it's pretty small in terms of like college classes or anything like that. I mean, this is for the whole city or just employees of human resources department?
Oh, no, it is. It's citywide.
Okay. And kind of going back to the question I had asked earlier on this evening, do we have like a policy about how long they have to stay in the job or working for the city if they take advantage of that, that benefit?
No, we don't have the person would need to stay here a certain number
Yeah,
of.
like if we paid for their degree or for their classes, do they have to stay? I'm asking just because I've seen that sometimes on the corporate side. That,
Right.
If you get reimbursed for tuition somewhere, you have to then stay, a year or something after you complete the program to
Right.
pay it back.
We don't. That's actually something I can look into. I
Okay.
think that's something worthwhile pursuing. We have
Especially if
not-
we're losing people to other cities for, better pay, that might be a good, not to micromanage.
No, thank you. That's-
I believe that happens now with police in the academy. They have to stay a certain amount
Yeah.
of time in order to, otherwise they owe us for the academy training.
We
Yeah.
do it with the schools as well for
Okay.
advanced training. So I should be clear, this is not, the management tuition reimbursement is for exempt employees. So you're not talking about, you're talking about a smaller pool of individuals.
Okay,
who-
yeah. Well, because, I we all know probably how expensive higher
Right, right.
education is
Right.
these days, that would be like one person, that whole amount. Yeah.
Councilor Madore?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for you. So going into the need and want question, and I value training. I went to school more than I should have. I have my AICP and I pay for AICP myself. I know how expensive it is. So if we go into the want and the need, if we determine that some of these trainings and education programs are needed, what are you doing to encourage employees to take advantage of it? Because if you're not doing that, then ultimately isn't that you want them to do this or you need them to do this. So what are some policies or kind of ways you're communicating to employees to make sure that this budget line item is well spent?
So, I mean, we get the word out, you know, through department heads, through flyers, through our Salem email. I mean, we would talk about it at department head meetings we have monthly. We have senior staff every couple of weeks with the mayor. I would talk with the department heads and promote it that way. You know, it's key. So we would get the word out so that people knew that they could do this, they could take advantage of it. Plus, when we do offer an in-house training, especially one of the ones that we've done, we make them sort of mandatory, whether it's the customer service type trainings we've done or the respect in the workplace that we've done. Those trainings have not cost us anything, but they're key and they're important, and it all builds the morale and the skill set and just sort of dealing with the public and what we're doing, so we make those mandatory. And so this would be more, of a, you know, it'd be more advantageous, obviously, for people to, you know, to push, we want to push for their education, we want to support you in this, and, you know, we'll get that word out.
Okay.
I'm not sure if that's what you're looking for.
Well, I guess, is there any kind of advancement policies where in order to go up a level in your salary, you need to get a certain certification and we will help you pay for that? Or you're just making this the soft encouragement, like this is good for you and you should go after this? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't think it's aligned as cleanly as you might be thinking about it.
Right.
I'd also say, you know, we're not a place that has tons of advancement opportunities, right? There's a lot of entry-level positions. We are trying to, I think, working in some of the, like the planning office, if you're AICP certified, you get a stipend, you know, having folks recognize the benefits of advancing their degrees. But I want to be clear, we're not so multi-layered where there's, you know, as much of an opportunity always for advancement at every single level. For us, I think it's one, scheduling these at a time when people can be there. The more we're using performatives in terms of our practices around hiring and around promotions when they are available, I think the more people are realizing that this is a skill set that I need if I do want to go for that next job that's a little bit higher in the rung. But we're still a small employer in some ways, so that there isn't necessarily a clear ladder in any position, right? If you are a go-getter and you're going to get involved and there's an opportunity where a job opens up, we've seen that happen, but I wouldn't want to say it's multiple opportunities like that, because there's just not that many positions that fit that kind of mold of you go from the junior to the deputy to the assistant. You know, we're just not built that way.
Councilor Peterson, then Councilor Dibble, and
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To ask that question maybe a little bit of a different way, do you see that tuition reimbursement as a need in the sense that it's a need for the department to have people further educated, or do you see it as a need in terms of it being an attractive benefit to get more people into those roles?
I think it's both.
Okay.
I would see it as both. I mean, if an employee, you know, when an employee knows that, you know, if I take A, B, C, or D class and, you know, it's costing me X and the city will reimburse me, you know, this amount over the course of the year, that might be more of an incentive. And then, you know, to echo what the mayor said, you know, there are times, I think, when maybe a lower level employee, although we don't have a lot of movement, but when we do, there's a skill set there that we need. And so if someone avails him or herself to that outside opportunity, then that will just help them parlay into the next job level.
Counselor Dibble, and then I'd like to remind everybody that we have 12 of these line items to go through, and we've been here for an hour and a half so far. So we should start moving this along.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have to agree with the Ward 2 counselor in her comments that some of these educational items are already in some of the departments or should be in the departments. So we have a true reflection on what the cost is of each of the departments. Can we, and there's a couple of the department heads in the room, and they're all thankful to Lisa for volunteering to go first where the mayor was running late. So Lisa, thank you for going first. Sorry, you're getting questions that have nothing to do with your department. But can we just walk through really fast the different columns? Let's use educational training as an example. The first column is fiscal year 2017 is at 0. So we didn't spend any money on educational training, I guess. The next column is adopted budget for 2018. It was 5,500. Can you walk us through each of the columns real fast on your, using just that one line item, and what each of those mean and how we got to those totals, so we can have a better understanding
Are
going
you
forward?
talking about just educational
Yeah,
training?
let's just use that as an example.
To be clear, there's a typo in this where the third column says FY 2019. That's adjusted FY 2018.
That would help. It would make more sense because we really bounced
That
around.
applies entirely throughout the budget.
Okay.
So the adopted budget in FY '18 was 5,500. I think part of that was a reflection of some AFSCME requirements for additional certifications that fit within there. You know, my recollection and us wanting to make sure we were actually undertaking some training beyond just what Maya offered us in exchange for reductions in our insurance policy. The adjusted budget was 3,500 in 2018, right? Year-to-date expenses, so that's this year so far when this budget was put together, it was 1,738.
Of the 5,500 or of the 3,500?
It's gotta be the 3,500, that's the adopted.
Well, the adjusted budget was 3,500, so that doesn't make a lot of sense, actually. It should be 55, 35?
No, it's because money was transferred.
Ah, I'm sorry, okay.
Okay.
So some funding was, thank you, Nina, some funding was taken out, and year-to-date expenses are 1,738. So,
We've only spent, with a month ago, we've only spent half of what the whole year's budget is.
well, I don't know what the regular tally is in terms of going forward for the remainder of this year. If sometimes there are costs front-loaded at the beginning of a budget, sometimes there are costs put forward at the end of a budget. So maybe we can get an outline of the expectation for the remainder of this fiscal year.
And then the department fiscal year 2019, that's the department head's request?
That's correct.
And then you, the mayor, increased it to $10,000.
Yep. With the idea that we feel like we need to do some additional training. We're seeing personnel that aren't always capable of advancing to that next level. We see an opportunity here to provide some additional training. We have yet to talk about building a stronger cultural competency among staff and training within the community, and that was a key aspect for the increase as well.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing none, if somebody wants to make a motion in one direction or another on this? Unless there's,
I'd like to make a motion to reduce the human resources budget, the educational training, back to the requested amount of $5,800.
that would be, you'd be doing that as a request to reduce the expenses by $4,200.
That's correct.
So.
That is the math.
Counselor Dibble makes a motion to reduce the human resource expenses budget by $4,200. Does that have a second? Seeing none, the motion fails. Would anybody else like to make a motion?
I would like to move to accept the, is that what the motion would be? Accept
You'd
the
move to
budget.
accept it, and if it's both, you'd move to accept the human resources departmental total of $329,025 would be the motion, if that's the case.
That is my motion.
All right, so Counselor Peterson moves to accept the human resources combined personnel and expenses budget in the amount of $329,225. That's seconded by Counselor Flynn. So any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? All those opposed? So moved.
Thank you, Lisa.
And then, well, we're not done with Lisa yet, because we
Yeah.
still have to do a whole bunch of other
Got a
stuff.
few more sections.
So she's
Start
just
spending
getting
some
started.
real money now.
It was for, right?
Yeah, I know.
So next we have the workman's comp personnel, and that's a department, and you'll notice we have a decrease there on the, between the departmental budget and the, between the departmental budget and the mayor's budget, we have a reduction here, so, and then this is an amount below what the budget for 2018 was. So if we could have some discussion on that.
Sure, so do you want me to just go the first part on the full-time salaries? Just to explain for the councilors that are new. We have been with Maya, our workers' comp carrier, since 2008, it's been a while. But these are claims that were still in process that we're gonna own until unfortunately, these people pass away. So we pay, their salaries that we pay based on their full and permanent disability, and so these are salaries we pay on a weekly basis. They are subject to a small COLA every year in October, that it's a multiplier number that comes out, and so it goes up a little bit every year.
Councilor
We have
Flynn.
5
The
people.
chair, what page you on right now?
Oh, sorry,
Sorry,
8-112.
8-112.
It's the next,
8-112?
yes, 8-112, it's the next thing down in the human resources budget.
Pages later.
Okay, thank you,
So just to be clear,
thank you.
yeah, the, all these, Counselor, all these 8-111 and on, so these next items, workers' comp, unemployment group insurance, are all within section 8.
Thank you.
Yep.
And so then the next line, workers' comp medicals, so we still, where we own those salaries for those, what we call those tail claims. So for any claims we had pre-Maya, pre our Maya contract, if there's any type of medical bills associated with those claims, or any claim prior to that, prior to our association with Maya, we're responsible for those. Some years it's high. One year I had to come in for an appropriation supplemental because we had an employee who had a claim prior to our joining Maya who required surgery again. And, you know, after an independent medical exam revealed that surgery was related to the older claim, we were still responsible for it. So this is sort of a moving target, but I'm optimistic. You know, we haven't had many medicals this year moving forward, so I did request less money for that this year, down to $5,000. At one point, that was up over $15,000. Surgeries are very expensive, even when we negotiate the rate with, as we're required to with the state of Massachusetts, the DIA rate.
Any questions on this budget from members? If there aren't any, I'd see a motion. Councilor Flynn? Councilor Flynn moves to approve the workman's comp personnel total of $412,444, seconded by Councilor Peterson. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor? Opposed? So moved. And next we have unemployment, another decrease.
Yeah, so, it's still a high number though.
8,115.
So this, unemployment, I can tell you that we keep an eye on this, as close as we possibly can. I have requested $350,000 this year, which is less than last year. And I'll attribute to that. The unemployment costs and the rate is based on the unemployment rate overall. So I don't foresee any increases and any extensions, which we used to have. Prior years, I've come back to the council asking for, again, supplemental appropriations when the economy was horrible and the unemployment rate was up over 7.5%. I mean, now we're at, nationwide it's 3.9, and Massachusetts towards the end of April was 3.5. So I don't really foresee any unfunded increases, because when the rate hits a certain level, that triggers the extension, and then we're responsible for that, and there's no reimbursement for that from the federal government or the state. So I don't see that happening, just I'm cautiously optimistic, but I'm okay. I think we'd be okay with this. I just do want to call attention to the fact that on the city side, a lot of this is attributable to the school department. We harbor a huge chunk of this unemployment. Like 92% is attributable to the school department, and about 8% right now is attributable to the city side of the house.
Yeah, I see that on the following page on 8-116. It's 93% of it is school and 7% is city.
Right.
So just to add to keep in mind, when many employers in the private sector, an employee leaves or is terminated in Massachusetts, we're a very, I would say, employee-friendly state, which means just about everybody qualifies for unemployment if they've been terminated or separated from service in any way, shape, or form. We frankly don't have a lot of turnover on the city side, not as much certainly on the school side. And on the school side, when folks do leave, remember they're not able to be employed right away at the end of a school year because there's no school. So there's a 3-month period of time where if someone is asked not to come back or leaves or service is terminated, even sometimes when it's with cause, we find that we're not able to prevail on unemployment areas. The individual is entitled to unemployment that we're still responsible for. So a large portion of this is on the school side. The vast majority of it comes on the school side of the house, and it's a dollar for dollar exchange. So when somebody leaves, it's not as though it goes to an insurance policy as there are in most private sector businesses. 90% of private sector businesses pay an insurance agent or an insurance policy for unemployment. 90% of municipalities, it's a dollar for dollar exchange. It's a whole self-funded prophecy.
So Councilor Dibble, then Councilor Madore.
I'll yield.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Lisa, what does that look like in terms of the number of former employees? You said 92 and 8%.
93 and 7.
93 and 7, but you said
Some of it
92.
depends on wages. So if you let go of, or if a principal doesn't come back, or an employee that's making more money, I'm just using schools, that's going to account for a higher number, right?
So it's based on wages, not the number
Correct.
of, okay.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right, so it's 50% of their average weekly wage. So right now, the maximum benefit, so if someone at the height, the maximum somebody can collect, which we see often, is $23,070. The maximum benefit rate is $769 for 30 weeks, plus there's a dependency, $25 per dependent. So that number can skyrocket. So we do have some systems in place. We have a really healthy dialogue with the school department as far as reasonable assurance letters, because if someone receives a reasonable assurance notification for the following September, then that person will, we have seen people apply for unemployment, but they're ultimately not eligible. And the other flaw that we do have at times is by the time, if a benefit is approved, and we're paying it because we have to pay it, we're reimbursable. So as the mayor's saying, we're not insured for that, we're self-insured. The state pays the bill and then we pay the state back. There are times where we have actually prevailed on a claim, but the claim has already been exhausted and the person's already collected $15,000 to $17,000. And at that point, the state becomes our agent. And the only time that'll even possibly come back to us in a credit is if that person ever applies for unemployment again. That'll be offset by what they've collected that they should not have received. And then we may get a credit back then.
Councilor Dibble.
Yeah, this one's kind of a need, not really a want at all. So with that, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the total personal and non-personal expenses for human resources unemployment compensation in the full amount, $350,000.
Okay, Councilor Dibble moves that we approve the unemployment compensation personnel total of $350,000. Seconded by Councilor Peterson. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor? All those opposed? So moved. All right, next we have the group insurance personnel. And that is a small increase, surprisingly. So if we can address that. I know we talked briefly earlier about how the GIC pretty much went back and said, whoops, never mind.
They did, but I have to say, I think it's only going to last for a year. I think the GIC actually saw a $60 million surplus this year, and so they sort of passed it on to everyone. There's also, they carved out the pharmacy benefit. So there are some short-term, I think, that we'll see. This number might increase more next year. Because some of the plan rates went down, which we haven't seen, but overall, all the plans are open. I can tell you that this number, Lori and I worked really hard on this with having actual enrollment numbers after we did open enrollment. We had the most current bill, and then we did sort of the transitions, the ins and the outs, and people that retired, where we think they're going. We cushioned with a few plans, but we're comfortable with this number.
We should also point out that working with the PEC this year, we also looked at going back to another provider. We put out a request for proposals to see if there was interest in leaving the GIC, what that would look like. And it was significantly higher. The premium estimates came back to us based on our claims history, significantly higher than staying with the GIC, and I think even the PEC recognized it would be against everyone's best interest to move out of the GIC, at least this year. We'll continue to monitor that, but it's so far for us been a cost saver overall, even though the plans aren't the same as what we've had in the past when we were a self-insured health insurance provider or when we were with Maya providing insurance.
And in most cases, it's usually the larger the group, the better the rate structure. I know at the time that we did switch to GIC, it was a significant cost savings in the initially. And moderator, any questions from members? Councillor Flynn.
Through the chair, on the opt-out program, do you usually use that amount every year, the full amount? Or is that something that rolls over from year to year if you don't, I can't imagine using that every year, right?
So I don't have the exact numbers, that's the one thing I forgot to get, and I will get the information to the council on the number of people that are enrolled, because it's $2,400 over a 2-year period for someone who opts out of the individual plan. And just for councilors that aren't aware, we sort of an incentive. I know the state does it, I think, continually. We've done it just a 2-year program. You need to be on the plan for a year, at least, a full 12 months, and then we offer an incentive to not be enrolled in our plan. It's $2,400 for an individual, and then it's $3,000 for a family. And we do that.
Have you ever run short on that? You know what I'm saying? Have you ever had
think
more
a couple-
people opt out than what you budgeted?
Well, it sort of staggers too, so sometimes it can be a bit of a moving target as well, because some people are in the first year, and then when they're in their second year, at open enrollment, we may have people opt out. But in answer to your question, I think I had to come back to council once, a couple of years ago. I can look, I
2017, it
don't
looks like
remember.
that was the case if we're budgeting that level, because 2017, your expenditures were $48,650 in 2017, but on the other hand, for 2018 so far, it's at 18,400.
But we just had open enrollment, so we
Right.
might have a bunch of people who
Yeah.
decide, hey,
Yeah.
it's cheap, I'm
I'll
gonna
get
go
the
on my
numbers.
husband or wife's, insurance and take advantage of the program to save us money, by the way, when they leave our system. So it's
Sure.
definitely, this is
Right.
one item that we don't mind if people take
If that one
advantage of
goes
it.
over, then the
because
other number goes down.
You got
so.
it, you got it. It generally is good for us.
Councillor Dibble.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mayor, I want to thank you for somehow finding $650,000 less than what the department requested here. Can either of you explain why that's such a big difference?
Yeah, so the health insurance number, when the department head puts a request in, it's an estimate based on what we think GIC prices are gonna be and what our plan enrollment's gonna look like. So the GIC has, several plans, and we know where people are, but until we go through open enrollment, we're not really sure how that's all gonna shake out. Is somebody gonna be on a more expensive plan or a less expensive plan? So between the original submission and the final budget number, that has come to fruition. 1, we have a solid number from GIC. 2, we have a better idea of what plans people have chosen and can actually cost out what the number is. And please add.
Right, no, you're right. I mean, like when I mentioned earlier, like in January, when, like I said, the sky was falling, right? I mean, that was a huge, sort of bombshell that was dropped, right? There would be plan consolidation. We thought the rates were going to skyrocket. We estimated at the time almost a 7% increase, and that was being conservative. And it didn't really shake out to be all that. Some of the rates went down.
So the mayor didn't work her magic, we just got it.
Oh, no, she absolutely did.
She single-handedly did it.
This is, some of that, when I say there's like a $2 million gap, some of it is,
Yeah.
We don't have final numbers until the end of what the tuition assessment's going to be at Essex Tech or what, health insurance is going to cost. So they're big items that, we start to pare down ourselves. Sometimes it works in our favor. There have been times when we had a number that was lower and it's gone the other way.
Right.
So in this instance, thankfully, but I think it's going to be a 1-year hiatus. We're going to need to continue to be mindful about health insurance. This doesn't just impact us, it also impacts our employees who pay, 25% of the cost, and retirees as well, so, or more in some instances, depending upon what plan you're on, if it's a PPO or an HMO.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Members of the committee? If not, Councillor Flynn.
Motion to accept.
Councillor Flynn moves that we accept the group insurance personnel figure of $13,168,268. Seconded by Councillor Peterson. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor? All those opposed? So moved. And with that, thank you, Lisa, for
Thank you.
going first and spending 2 hours in the hot
problem.
seat.
Any follow-up questions, I'm happy to answer them down the road or email me or whatever. Thank you.
So, yeah, I mean, some of the questions that came up are definitely worth it, and would be, and if we can get some of that follow-up on numbers, that would be, that'd be good. The other thing what we'll do, because of the order of things and who's here, I think we'll do, if it's okay, if you guys are all good with this, we'll do the city solicitor and licensing board next, then we'll do the city clerk and city council, then we'll do planning, because there's a lot of stuff there, and we'll do the mayor last, because she's here for the duration. So I think the solicitor and the city council, city clerk side should be relatively quick, so, but, I could be surprised. So that's section 8, subsection 10 for the solicitor side, and for this one, the city solicitor will, she's got a microphone over there for recording purposes, so we'll let her stick over there. So, Beth?
So several years ago, several people may recall that the licensing department came under the legal department, so we have to merge budget. What you see in the budget is on the salary section, salaries for the legal department, which consists of myself, the assistant city solicitor, and paralegal. And then on the licensing side, we have the licensing board plus the stipends for the licensing board members. In addition to that, we have a overtime budget, which is for primarily the licensing board clerk and primarily for the month of October, which is out month and members meeting weekends and Halloween time. You'll see the changes in overtime is $500 because we're looking at busy season coming up with Halloween, and we are entertaining the possibility of doing more in-house vendor management than we have in the past. We're going to be putting out CPOs, expect that coming up shortly, but we anticipate there will be more personnel out on the street this Halloween, more noise, noise regulations, and more vendors and street dogs and so on. You see an increase in the salaries. Vicki Palmer, our assistant solicitor, had been 25 hours per week. Her workload has increased due to a lot, as many of you know, with the Airbnb regulations, the marijuana regulations. So we've increased her hours by 3. On the non-personnel side, we have our legal services budget, which is the same, which is $50,000, and that is for outside legal services, primarily land use cases. And this coming year, we will be going to trial at both sides over contract dispute and the transfer station and the calling case. The only other change to AC here is the judgment line was reduced for $2,000 based on where we are right now this year with settlement claims. And that budget is the City Council Claims Committee's budget and when they see fit to settle the claim. We've only spent $4,000 so far this year.
Any questions from members of the committee? So the only thing I'll ask quickly, so I know Vicky's workload has been kind of enormous. I'm amazed that she can cram that into only 3 extra hours a week. She seems like she works about 60 hours a week, so I didn't even realize that she was only working 25.
Right.
So, wow. No wonder she always looks so busy. So do you have any particular I know we worked for a lot on marijuana. I know she did a lot of work on this upcoming sci-fi contract and permit. That was a month-long process. Are there any particular big projects coming across that you anticipate at this point?
Airbnbs are a big issue. Such as talking to the attorney, the representative housing authorities today. That is a big ticket item.
Go ahead. We still have collective bargaining contracts that we are engaged in, both on the patrol union side and AFSCME. Those are those take up time and.
That was the first hour before you got here.
Okay.
We talked about that a lot.
Okay, all right, so a good amount of her time is carved out on
Working
labor
on those negotiations.
Yep.
Yeah, I've gone to drop in on her for stuff a few times, and she's been in the middle of one of those. So.
Yeah, I think we're all feeling like we're drowning right now. There's a lot of work going on, but most of it good, so.
Any questions? If there are none, then if somebody wants to make a motion on this, Councilor Flynn.
Motion to accept.
Councilor Flynn moves to accept the solicitor licensing, personnel, and expenses budget of $353,913. Seconded by Councilor Dibble. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor? Opposed? So moved. And we will do the City Clerk, City Council next. Section 2 in your books.
Thank you, Beth.
City Council mission statement, why we exist. Many might question that one.
I'd like to make a motion that we keep this photograph in here forever. Seems like Joe O'Keefe.
Joe O'Keefe was working in the,
I'd be fine with keeping it. I'm hidden in the back, so it's a good picture of me.
Joe right in the front.
Yep. Oh, he always was in the front of every photo. I will, before we get started on this, I will relate to this picture. One of the first things Joe tried to teach me was how to position myself to be in front of the camera for every photo. He's like, come here, stand here, stand right there. And that was one bit of advice I did not take from him. I try and hide in the photos as much as possible. There's a lot of me to hide though, so it doesn't work out that way. So, just start off with this. So to start off here, we have our current city clerk, Eileen Simons, who will take us through we'll start out with the city council side because it's the first page in here, the city council side of the budget. We already know about one of the increases, so.
Sure. So first of all, I just wanted to start by, thank you for having me tonight. This is my first budget meeting, so just take that into consideration, please. And I also wanted to thank the mayor for, we level funded for our salaries, and we saw that there was a 2% non-union or management increase in there, so I wanted to thank her for that as well. And, did she heard that? And,
You just got thanked.
You guys got thanked.
No, and I thank you for our increase. And also want to thank the mayor for recommending to use the rest of our budget until June 30th for a part-time person, which, who has started the other day, and I'm trying to get that person, we hope maybe for fiscal year 19 as well, but we'll take 18 for now. So, and for those of you who don't know, once the mayor recommended and suggested that I could do that, I called Cheryl. So she's coming in, not doing city council, she's helping me and doing other things while we're down a couple of
A little
months.
retiree return.
So, I'm sorry, which budget did you want to start with?
Personnel.
Yeah, we have another,
which
can we have
one?
another
City
cake when she
council?
leaves again after that?
What's that?
No, can we have another cake after she leaves again?
I
'Cause that was a
know,
really
huh?
good cake.
So we're doing city council budget?
Yes,
Okay.
council first, that is 814.
So you want to talk about salaries?
Sure, this
Talk
one's
about
fairly
salaries.
set because the.
Yep, this is fairly set. The only difference, well, there is a couple of changes, has been that in January of 2019, the city council salary will go up for about, will be going up $1,500 per person, so that was budgeted for. But at the same time, since Councilor Flynn does not receive compensation, the budget is also going down $15,000 overall. So that's where we get the $152,200 from. And funny that that $15,000 is the same that I try to put in for my budget for city, for a part-time person. But, so that's all I have on the salaries.
Okay, and if you can, I guess if you could take us through the.
Go through the expenses as well?
Yeah, the expense, the
Sure.
advertising
Yep.
and printing and binding side of this. I know we have some
Sure, yep.
adjustments there, but.
So on the advertising side, as you know, that we have come in for appropriations a couple times this year and in the past as well, because it's very difficult to know how many traffic ordinance, zoning ordinances, code of ordinances that are going to have to be advertised. So what I had tried to do was to do an average of the last 3 years to put in originally for 37,000. We were, the mayor was kind enough to increase it from 20 to 25 and hope to stay within that, again, depending on what our, what we pass for ordinances will dictate the advertising budget.
Sure, and that's, I mean, we probably don't have a huge blast like we did with marijuana and all the zoning changes.
We will have some big bills coming in even just for the remainder of this year, and that's when you just got the
Yeah.
appropriation, because we still will have the bond orders and some of the zoning that will be coming out of Council McCarthy's committee, hopefully before the end of the year, will be part of fiscal year 18 if they're passed.
Okay.
Okay, so let's see, printing and binding, that was, I had tried to increase that to $23,000 because more code of ordinances, traffic and zoning ordinance that we pass, our muni code bill goes up, and we, so it's kind of tied in together. But we received $19,400 for that, so we're also we're in discussions with Muni Code about trying to see what we can do to decrease those bills or kind of keep them a little bit more constant and see if we can work with them a little bit more too. They just seem to, because we put them on the internet, we keep getting bills all the time because we put them in as we get them on the internet, so they're on there when they get passed, and then at the end of the year, they get incorporated into the rest of the online Muni Code, as well as the supplement, so maybe we're looking on getting less paper and more on the website, and so that takes care of that. And let's see, on the, and also that, some of that decrease was due to the $3,600 that after the budget, after I had the budget meeting with the mayor, $3,600 came out due to West Group. We're no longer gonna purchase the hard copy or receive the hard copies and the pocket inserts where I got a license or a username to use for the law library online. So I agreed that we didn't really need the books, as lovely, as they look, but I only go to a few books most of the year, and I can do that online. So that's where that reduction also came from. So that was, so that's where we got the $19,400 again, as I said. And let's see, the mayor added, we have the in-state travel meetings and training line for the city council that we haven't had in the past. So that is for the councilors to use if they're going to like a conference or an MMA training session. The mayor thought that would be helpful to include that to help defray costs for you to attend. And let's see, dues and subscriptions went up a little bit, for the same reason for when I attend association meetings, lunches, breakfast, whatever, conferences. I really do pay a lot out of pocket, and I also ask for an increase so I can, to bring other people with me to learn and to hear what the associations are all about. And I think that was it. The midterm inaugural stayed the same.
Okay, any questions? Councilor Peterson?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Eileen and the mayor, both. I want to just get a little bit of clarification further about that advertising line item and how realistic you feel like it is, because I know we did get a lot of those requests this year, and so I know you explained it a little, but if you can just tell me what you think, like if you, and I understand we're not in a position to raise the amount, but just so I understand.
Again, it's hard to predict because it does depend on what happens in, what gets passed in council for ordinances, and I can't, and the rates of the publishers, to publish an ad has gone up. So, I brought some examples of like the smallest ads, like traffic, is like $166.75. And here's like and then when we had a zoning, change, or, I can't even read these been copied a few times, but like this is the Board of Health, when we did the certificate of fitness, was like 2668, this size. So it does vary in range, and by Mass General laws, I'm required to advertise, so it's very hard to
And
predict.
I know in that sense, our back's a little against the wall, but have we ever negotiated with the paper? Do we have like any kind of special rate since we advertise with them so often?
Special rate, all right.
I saw that with a smile, I knew it was coming.
I have not, I don't know if that's something that can be
I
done.
don't know even if that's possible.
Purchasing, I don't know if that's
So
something.
we have strict requirements for where legal ads can be.
It has to be
There's a
general
case law that sets
circulation.
what the circulation is predominantly in this area. Frankly, the Salem News is really the only paper that meets the court requirements for advertising.
Totally.
And I think they kind of recognize that themselves.
Yeah. They are a business.
Yeah.
That makes
So
sense, but yeah.
it's really difficult to, there's not a lot of competition.
And it puts us in
No,
a
because-
monopoly situation.
Because I remember a couple years ago, when we did early voting, we were supposed to put out a press release, and the state was trying to get us to, maybe the newspaper will put it in as a press release, and lo and behold, we got actually a letter from the Salem News to say that these will be paid ads, basically, is what they said. So, it's different, I have to do what I have to do, but,
Yeah.
as
Okay.
the mayor said,
Thank you.
they're the only business in town because of the circulation.
We did increase it just from
Yeah.
20,000.
Yeah.
and
20,000.
depending
We'll see
on
what-
how busy we
we'll
are,
see what
may
we
have to
do.
supplement that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Counselor Dibble?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. This is something that's bothered me for some 3 decades, so thank you for asking this question. I used to drop off legal ads to the Salem News when I worked for the planning department years ago, 30-something years ago, 31 years ago. It's mind-boggling how the news would take that ad and put it in giant font size and bill us more. And they'd even put the title on the stationery on the ad as well. So it's our job to give them as little, we're the customer, it's our job to give them as little information as we want typed in there and specify what size font or, so I've raised this issue a couple times over the last couple of years. This and one other issue I'll bring up now. But Mayor, can you have, and it just doesn't affect this department, it affects the legal department, the planning department, anybody who's sending out ads, legal ads. It affects all of us, and it's a lot of money between the whole city hall, school department as well. Can we have somebody, maybe the legal department, look and see how we can reduce these things down to the minimum size and the minimum amount of text so that let's cut this budget in half. It's just too big. Not just your budget.
No,
all the city departments' budgets for these legal ads.
I do know, I don't know if Beth is still here, but I do know by law that the only time that we can summarize an ordinance is when it's over, I think, 8 pages long,
Yep.
which has only happened maybe once or twice, but it has.
So we need longer ordinances.
Yeah, so we can, but again, the ordinances for first passage have to be the whole ordinance. I mean, I don't know how big or small that is to you, but this was on the Salem Common use, and it was $800, and that was the whole ordinance that we passed.
Perhaps there's simply ways that we're not seeing that we can get creative and shorten it. And take off the signature line, take
We need to
whatever we
write
can
shorter
take off.
ordinances, basically.
Yep. Like the Lorax Tree 37-page ordinance.
Well, that
That
can
would
be
be summarized.
summarized.
Yeah. One of the things that I had spoken to Dominic a while ago, and it has nothing to do with the cost on here, but it's on the emails that we're getting. If we can have all the departments put their attachment right into the body of the email, times all the department heads, times the 11 counselors, we have to open so many attachments to see what that meeting is about and what the date might be. But if I had made this request a year and a half ago to you, and a few departments started doing it. But the lion's share of them don't do that. So we could all save a lot of time. Yeah, you put the attachment in there, but copy the body right into the email. And then we're not all opening attachments all over the place, all the time. For 20 emails a week or so, it's a lot of attachments opening up times everybody. Just gonna save some time, times everybody who opens these attachments. But on the, if we can have the city solicitor look at how we can reduce these legal ads for all departments, not just your department, Eileen.
honestly, I'll, just before I recognize Counselor Flynn, I'll differ. I prefer all these things to be in as attachments, because that way it's easier for me to take them, save them to a directory if I want to do it that way, and pull the stuff out. I don't like to see it. What I don't like is when occasionally the text is duplicated in the message as well as being in the attachment. I prefer to see it in the attachment.
I'm not saying retype it, just simply
So-
copy and paste it right into the,
Yeah, I prefer it the other way around, so we'll have to just get them to switch it to, do it for each individual person. Just have to change the process. Counselor Flynn.
Through the chair, I'm just confused on the expenses part of it, where the increase at the bottom says 29.76%.
what page are you on, Counselor?
On 8-14,
That's the increase from the fiscal year 18.
You go to the
From the
second
adopted
column,
budget.
it's 35,000, so it's been adjusted by
950
additional
to
appropriations.
46.
but isn't it like proposed from the mayor less, you know what I mean?
Not, it's less from what I asked for.
It's the year over year.
62,250. That's what I asked for. It was approved for 46,650, but it's from 35,950 from the adopted budget of fiscal year 18 where that increase
And
comes
it's
from.
29%.
30% higher than this year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Percent
Yes.
is the
just
second
to be
column
clear,
to the last
And, yes.
the percentage
And that-
is
so
the,
if you're- So it's really the advertising that went up 5,000, the printing and binding went up 4,900,
Okay.
the in-state travel was added for 1,000, the 300, and the same, and that's where the 29% comes from,
Okay, thank you.
yeah, that was, my explanation has been taken care of for me.
so.
Any other questions? Counselor Milo?
please.
I'll defer to the committee
I
member
just
right
simply
now.
wanted to
I'll
point
wait.
out that I believe our city clerk is doing an excellent job here today filling in, but also as city clerk over the last couple of months, she's doing an excellent job.
Counselor Milo?
I agree with that, but
Ditto.
I'm not a member of the committee. I can't make any motions to reduce anything, but I'm looking at that in-state travel and $1,000 available to us as council members when we're gonna get a $1,500 raise. I think we can pay for our own travel.
I'll say this to it. I don't have a problem with it being in there. I don't have any particular need or desire to use it, but I don't have a problem with it being in there, assuming that nobody does take advantage of it during the course of the year and the experience turns that out, then it's something we can drop for the next budget. I've gone to some MMA events. They haven't been terribly, they've been very useful, but I generally, when I've done them, I've done stuff that's very close by, so I don't worry about the travel. Sure.
Mr. Chair, respectfully, I have to differ with you. I don't think it should be there. I think for $1,000, it's just like I think it sends a bad message. I mean, whenever I've gone anywhere, I've always paid my own way, and I would expect that everybody would do that. That's a part of our job. We get paid to do our job. I don't see where we should be reimbursed for mileage or anything like that when we already get a salary.
Sure, I paid my
It's
way
not
as well,
corporate
so.
here, so.
Counselor Dibble?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd have to agree with the at-large counselor who's not a member of the committee. I'd like to make a motion that we reduce the city clerk's budget for the in-state meeting, training, and
It would be
travel.
overall, it would be the overall city council expenses.
Reduce the city clerk budget by $1,000 for the in-state travel, meeting, and training.
Again, I'll just reiterate, we can't say it's for the in-state travel meetings training. You can move to reduce the city council expenses budget by $1,000, which is which is a legal motion to make. We can't do it to the item,
Okay, so be it.
but that's fine. I just want to make sure you do it correctly if you're going to make the motion, so,
So moved.
okay?
I'll second that.
All right, so Counselor Dibble makes a motion to reduce the city council expenses budget by $1,000, seconded by Counselor Flynn.
Before you vote on that, can I just offer
Sure.
some commentary since I
Sure.
added it? I definitely was not anticipating anyone getting reimbursed for mileage. I mean, I actually don't know any counselors who've ever done that. We'd probably owe you a heck of a lot more than $1,000, but The goal here, just like we have trainings for staff and for board members, is to try and provide some professional development opportunities for city councilors. So Mass Municipal Association, National League of Cities, I mean, there are a lot of organizational strengths for legislative bodies, whether it's issue specific, short-term rentals, we're not the only one dealing with that. There's a lot of legislative bodies dealing with that. So there are sometimes symposiums, and they have fees. They're small fees. At times, they can be a little bit larger. I think it's a couple $100 or so to go to Mass Municipal's annual meeting. But there are oftentimes, there might be an Urban Land Institute seminar that you're interested in, or a new legislators, orientation session. It feels to me like there's real value in that. So I understand your point, Councilor Milo, that the council does receive a salary, but these are items that we'd love to encourage people to attend because we think they would add value to what you're doing as a job. And you're already taking time away from your family. You're taking time out from a lot of times your professional responsibilities that you have. This was just meant to be a way to make it a little bit easier for folks who are interested in taking advantage of some of those programs. MAPC has offerings at times, most of which oftentimes are inexpensive. And so it was a small sum, but whatever the wishes of the body are, I just wanted you to at least know it really wasn't about like the travel cost as much as it was the actual the work of symposium or the training sessions and the professional development opportunities they have that we think there's value in. So
Sure, Councilor Milo.
that was the logic behind it.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, through you respectfully to the mayor, I agree that there's value in all of these. And I think if we individually feel that we will receive something from these, I'll give you, for instance, Mass Municipal, I paid to go there. DOR, Finance 101, whatever it was when I first got elected, I went there. I don't believe that a $50 registration fee or a $100 registration fee is going to prevent anyone from going who truly feels they're going to get benefit from it. I think having that $1,000 line item there is just going to eat away at people. I don't think the optics are good, and I just don't think that we need it. We're going to get a $1,500 raise. So, I mean, conceivably, my raise could cover that $1,000. So I guess maybe if anybody wants something, they can come to me. I'll give them $100 out of my raise or whatever. But I just have to respectfully disagree with this.
So, you agree with Councilor Dibble?
I agree with the council at large. It's the reason why I made the motion, so let's move the question.
Sure.
Can I just say something? I just wanted to say that, it's will of the body, but of course, like you just talked a lot with the HR director about education and trying to get, people, so these would be things that are dealing directly for the city council that they get involved in. So that was, I think, I didn't mean it for travel, I meant it for, attending conferences that are related to your job, that's all. But it's the will of the body.
I'll say I appreciate the intention of putting it in there. I don't have a problem with it being in there, knowing its purpose. I don't have a problem if it goes away either. It's because that's not, the fact that it's there could be an asset to some people. It's not something that I've had to, had anything to take advantage of in this time. I don't expect I would, but it's, I see the intent of it being there, and I don't see anything, I guess I don't see harm to it, but, again, it would be the will of the body. So on the question of the reduction of city council expenses in the amount of $1,000, all those in favor? Opposed? So the motion ties and does not carry. So, that said, any other questions, or if anybody wants to make a further motion? Councilor Peterson?
I move that we accept this budget at $198,850.
So Councilor Peterson moves to accept the total city council budget in the amount of $198,850. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Dibble. So, seeing no further discussion, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. And here to the city clerk departmental budget. looking at the numbers, we remain very busy.
Great.
And Eileen,
So
if
there's
you-
been no staffing changes?
Yes.
I'm only kidding. Sorry.
A few people.
I'm trying to bring my sense of humor. I
What page are we
apologize.
on?
We are on 819 is the budget.
Okay. So, again, it's pretty standard. The mayor had given the 2% increase to the non-union management position. We are looking to replace the city clerk. I, did ask for a part-time person in that office for doing things that we don't normally get to, such as, disposing of records no longer required by Mass General Law, trying to reorganize the vault, writing grants to get money to retrofit the vault and get it back up and working, digitizing and scanning things online. Not that we can't do it itself as a staff, we just was hoping, but I guess that's a want versus a need, and, so we will hopefully try again another day. So that's pretty much the same as last year. We did have an opening also in our, if you can see on the second page of the union people, Jeanette Inoa had left us on March 16th, so we had also a body down there. So that was 2 full-time bodies, full-time employees down in the city clerk's off payroll. That position has since been filled a couple weeks ago after interviewing, but our part-time bilingual election worker applied for the job, and she was also working on trying to cross-train people, so she was already had learned the job a little bit, and we thought she was the best fit, especially with her bilingual skills. She's working out great. Now we just need a person, part-time bilingual person in the elections office, which is our next budget, but because elections are getting closer and closer, and it would be nice to have people in there, and I don't know what else is going to happen in terms of people moving around, so that's it for the salaries, unless the mayor or anybody would like to add anything, or any questions?
Any questions from members of the committee? Or members of or non-members of the committee? Seeing none, I do think it's fairly straightforward. Councillor Peterson.
I move that we,
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to say there's no changes on the expense side.
okay. Thank you. I move that we accept this budget at 304,319.
So Councillor Peterson moves to accept the city clerk personnel and expenses budget in the amount of $304,319. Seconded by Councillor Flynn. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor? Opposed? So moved. And last, in the city clerk side, we have on 8/25 elections.
Okay, so on
Another
the...
case with year-over-year decrease.
So on the salary staff side, we have in place for our part-time person, which we, I think it's been a few years now that we have that part-time person, 2 to 3 years. And she is, that person is the one that moved over to room 3 full-time, so we do have the money, so I'm working with the HR director on filling that position, again, hopefully soon. So that was the only change, so there's really no change in money-wise, it's just change of how many people are right now currently in the office, staffed.
Excuse me.
Bless you. So on the expense side, we have an increase, I asked for an increase in poll workers since this year is early voting. So there is going to be the 10 days in October of early voting. And there's still talks back and forth whether they're gonna try to put through the 5 days of early voting in September. I know it passed in one, in the House, not in the other. but there's still some legislators that are still trying within the next 100 days to get the 5 days of early voting because of it being on Labor Day. So I was trying to anticipate for that. I think early voting worked out well 2 years ago, and we're hoping to make the system, in the process better, but I do need the money to staff for early voting for the 10 days, and if there's going to be another 5 days, I went back to fiscal year 17 and asked for the 51,000. Didn't quite get that, but we'll try to figure that out.
So basically, you're level funded right now, and and then you can come back if and when we know.
There
what
was an
the-
increase
Okay.
from the last fiscal year, but last fiscal year was in early voting. So it's kind of always like every other year, there's early voting and not early voting, or sometimes we have to print our ballots. We don't have to print our ballots, so it's always kind of a change in target.
Okay, and then if it turns out that early voting requirements from the state are going to expand that, then we come back like with the advertising budget.
And let's see, I think, and the mayor was able to save us on the voting machine services. I level funded that from 2018. We had decreased it for $4,100 because I'm going to purchase our poll pads I want for early voting, which will make the check-in process a lot easier. I will take that out of another account. So we had some savings there. As you can see, it's a -5 overall, -5%, which...
Okay, I'll just say, I remember a discussion with you a couple of, recently about our aging polling equipment.
Yes,
So-
that is... Go ahead.
Is that ultimate replacement something that we're starting to plan for?
No. Well, yes and no. We were told by the owners of LHS, we had a demonstration over, we went over to the Peabody City Hall where they demonstrated one of their new ballot machines. And he did tell us that the AccuVote, which we have the second version, but it's still, we had it since 1998. They have not been decertified yet from the state, but the owner did say that they have bought up every part available to an AccuVote system, and once they're gone, replacing them, they're gone. So we do have to forward think in terms of, and that we do have another account that I'm trying to keep increasing to maybe purchase, because we'll need 16 of them, and right now, that would probably cost us about $90,000. That's just for the, and that's just for like the ballot box and the tabulator.
The current versions of
The current version, but if the state certifies the poll pads or the electronic poll pads versus the manual check-in, that would be an additional cost. And that's what we're using right now. They're allowed to be used for early voting, but they're not certified for the regular elections.
Okay.
I should also say there's a large sum of federal funding that is supposed to be distributed to the states in light of all of the activities regarding potential voter fraud. It's tied up right now, but my understanding is at some point there's supposed to be money from the federal government flowing through to states to help with improving machines and ensuring that they're tamper-proof. And the machine that we have is supposed to be one of the better models with a backup paper, as opposed to the districts that have gone completely paperless. So I don't know how the priorities are going to flow. But my understanding is there is some federal funding that is supposed to be coming through to help with this issue. And that's one of the reasons, frankly, that we haven't put in place any capital dollars, because we're hoping there'll be some state and/or federal resources to tackle it.
And we're not quite there yet. But yes, I have to say our machines, we do have a technician on site if something happens. I've been working with them for a long time and pretty familiar with them, and we do still have somebody in case they have to troubleshoot them, but as you can see on some of the recounts, not that I want to use that word, but that the tallies come out pretty much on the dot. So so they are good machines, but they're just going to be outdated soon.
Okay. Councilor Dibble.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When we last had this discussion some time ago, clearly early voting is successful and it's a good thing, but it's also a costly thing. We had talked to Cheryl, the former city clerk, about when we were before you folks were here, the new counselors, we had a discussion probably a year and a half ago, I forget how long ago, about getting back to us on if certain days were really low turnout, it didn't make sense to redo those dates again, or certain hours were really bad, or certain locations were bad. And I never heard anything back on that. Do we have an idea of the times that it's just almost a waste of money not to staff and to maybe eliminate that certain Saturday morning or Friday night or during Halloween downtown or whatever?
Sure. I can tell you that early voting is the 10 days, and and during the week, they have to be during your normal business hours, so there's no flexibility there. And the Secretary of the Commonwealth strongly encourages us to have Saturday hours. I thought it worked well in terms of, even if it's not totally huge turnout, but at least allows, when we were at the Salem Academy, allowed people not to be in the downtown area, because we have the twist of early voting always falling on Halloween or near Halloween, so it's hard for people to get to City Hall, especially on certain nights. But there is no flexibility in terms of during the week and during the hours, so that means you have to even come in early just to be up and ready to start at 8 o'clock, and you have to be able to vote until 4 or whenever the last person in line is. We were at the high school Friday night, and people seem to really enjoy being able to stop on their way home from work and coming in on a Friday night. I felt that was very busy, but I'll take a look at it again to see. But again, there's not too much wiggle room in terms of when we can do it, and being strongly encouraged by the Secretary of the Commonwealth to have weekend hours, and I think people like it. So
Strongly encouraged is such a gentle way of saying it.
Yeah, I mean, we do get incentives to have it there. They'd give us a little bit of money to put towards, like, signs or whatever, but people do, even though it might not increase the overall turnout, people do like early voting. And I like it for the voters. I don't personally like for myself and our staff. It's very busy, but we get through it. I think there's ways we can improve it, and that's why I'm trying to do the poll pads. But I can get back to you on specific dates and try to find out if I can break it down by how many voted on what date.
Yeah, did we just say that, through the chair, did we just say that it didn't increase the overall number of votes?
I'm talking about voter turnout.
Yes, I'm talking the same thing.
I mean, I have to, I have to look at my numbers again, but I think there was articles written about, in terms of, it might have been more spread out, but in terms of overall turnout, I have to check my numbers again. So I don't want to speak out of turn.
I will say this,
It did lower the
presidential
lines.
election years, people are going to turn out.
Yeah,
Because
I
they
mean-
always turn out. But it'll be interesting to see what it means in a year like this, when the
Right.
turnout isn't normally quite as high as in a
Right.
presidential year, but it's still a national election and it's still a state election. My guess is that if it has an effect on turnout and gooses it would be more in a year like this, when people who otherwise might not turn out, because you have a drop from presidential years to state years to local years, only years when the mayor's on the ballot, to local years when we're the only ones on the ballot. And it drops in attendance to each one, and turnout to each one of those, which is a shame, but.
Yeah, so I think that we should look to predict this and to make a savings to the city of Salem and only have additional days on the, I don't want to say more important elections, but the higher level office elections, to have more frequency in the early
That's
voting.
part of what it is right now. The early voting is only for the state and federal, and not for the municipal.
Right, yeah.
That's the way the current laws is together.
And, and it did lower the line, I mean, in terms of people waiting to vote on a presidential, like 2 years ago was the presidential election. But then, the wardens and the clerks had, stacks of early voting ballots to put through, so people seem to like it. I mean, as I said, I like it for the people. Wish there was some tweaks the state could make to some of the rules, but I got to do what I got to do by mass general law, so there's...
But if it
Can't really-
costs us a lot more money and we don't get any increase in the total voting, it doesn't make sense.
We still,
Well,
we
again,
we can't
I'm
ignore
going
it
to check
because it's
those
a state
numbers.
mandate.
Don't quote me, but it's a state, it's a state law. I can't,
I believe, Mr. Chair, that we went above and beyond. We had additional days than what was required.
Yeah, I don't recall what the days were, but I know we did make the effort to reach out and do it in different locations. We had it at Salem Academy, we had it at Salem High School.
yeah.
I think, didn't we do it at 135 Lafayette also?
No, we did it on a Thursday night, a long night. We did it both here and at Salem High School, as well as Friday night at Salem High School, and then a Saturday for a few hours because people requested it at the Salem Academy School, so people didn't have to drive through downtown. So
I'd say either which way.
so
one of
we
these-
have to do it at least the Monday through Friday, so we added a Saturday. We did take Sunday off,
Yeah, that-
while the voters did.
That first experiment with it 2 years ago, I think, went pretty well overall.
It was kind of,
And, and one of the objectives here is we wanted to provide better customer service to people who want to vote and encourage them to come out. So hopefully, I think whatever we wind up doing this year, I think will give us a much better idea of how much turnout is going to be increased.
it is true,
if at all.
turnout changes depending what the election is and who's on the ballot, whether it's a presidential or a state. But people want voter access, accessibility, so it's one way to give it to them, and I'm willing to do it. So.
Councilor Dibble, then Councilor Flynn.
Yeah, it's clearly a good thing, and I'm not disagreeing at all. I believe that the dates and locations have to come before the city council for our vote at some point. So we can get those numbers, so we can make an intelligent, informed decision on whether we add more days or if we go down to the bare bone minimum or whatever it be, with what the actual voter turnout is and what is required. Then we can talk about it intelligently before we have to take a vote on it. So for tonight, it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
I
Councilor
can do
Flynn?
that.
Through the chair, for your first budget, I just want to say you did an excellent job with some tight numbers here, and thank you very much, and you're doing an excellent job.
Thank
Appreciate
you,
your hard
and
work.
thank all of you.
Thank
The
you.
council and the administration can't do it without everybody, so
No,
thank
it was
you.
very thorough discussion by you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So if there's no further questions or discussion, I see motion. Councilor Flynn?
Motion to accept.
Councilor Flynn moves that we accept the elections and registration personnel and expenses budget in the amount of $196,023. Seconded by Councilor Peterson. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor? Opposed? So moved.
Thank you.
Aren't you ready to go first?
Thank you, myself.
By the way, especially to the new councilors, this is a place to do the scorecard really as we go
Yep,
through,
thank you.
if you're not already. All right, so the penultimate for the day would be planning. And we have Tom Daniel here, and that's,
Oh, you're the mayor too, right?
yeah, well, she goes last.
You sit down.
She's always like, because she's going to be here anyway, so we beat her up after we finished and let all the other people go home and stuff, so. She puts the boxing gloves on and then,
Routine.
and I will say one note here before we start. This is something, as we get to they always write this gigantic 87-page narrative that I think they work half the year on. Is there a staff planner for writing this narrative, or?
So it's a we've become more efficient in this because we do it for the budget and then also for the preliminary official statement for bond. We have another data set, and then we also help this the finance office off with another thing. So we've become really efficient. I've got like a data set spreadsheet where people are assigned, and I ask them to update, and then we pull it all together.
I'm sorry, longer is not more efficient.
What's that?
Longer is not more efficient.
No. The back
Assembly process.
The assembly process is very efficient now.
So just to point something out, so the budget for here is on page 8190, but if you look to the next page, for the new members of the committee on 8191, 8192, you'll note that a lot of these positions, the amounts are in here. And then in the case of the planning department in particular, a lot of the planning department salaries are paid partly out of city direct dollars and partly out of grant dollars. So if there is somebody whose salary is grant funded, you can see in here that they get it through a particular source. And if it's split between different departments as well, because that happens in some areas of the budget. So you'll see this some in engineering as well, where people might be paid partly by the water department, partly by the sewer department, or partly by a different function. So you'll see their individual department total will be in one place, and then there will be a section that contains the full amount with all the different sources combined for our reference.
Okay.
So, now that that's been said, any questions so far?
Do you want us to just ask questions, or is he
Yeah,
going
no,
to talk
if you- yeah,
first?
so-
Yeah, okay.
Yes, Councilor Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, this is, I don't know, I didn't know if you were going to talk through this first, but when I was reading through it earlier, I had just one clarifying question.
Sure.
About on page 185 at the very top, where it talks about housing and assistance around that. Can you talk about that?
Sure. So this portion of the narrative is speaking to our CDBG and home funded programming. And so we have a first-time home buyer program as well as a housing rehab program. And these housing numbers speak to those programs that are operating. I'll just say, contextually thank you, Mr. Chair, for orienting folks to how the department is structured with the planning department budget, but then also HISCOM, planning board.
Well, back when you were here the first time with this, back when you were in the city the first time, was actually the Ward 1 counselor and I who couldn't read the whole thing and got you guys to put this in. So.
Okay. And then so just for context, so we're a department of 13. We staff 10 different boards and commissions, as well as manage different planning processes and projects. We do a lot of grant writing and grant management, and we pursue different designations at state and federal levels that can help enhance our grant rankings. So things like, the Green Communities Program, which we've been part of for many years. This past year, we became a municipal vulnerability program community, which helps with ranking on some sustainability, resiliency opportunities. We just have received a federal designation for opportunity zones, which doesn't have a grant connection, but it can provide some other opportunities that we're hopeful of. And then through state, we have a lot of state partners that we have strong relationships with, so that helps us in our grant applications, whether it's, Mass Cultural Council, Mass Historic Commission, Department of Housing, Community Development, Energy and Environmental Affairs. So we're an active department, really great team that I just want to acknowledge the work that folks do in the department. In terms of staffing changes that we've had, the narrative neglected to note Amy Walsh, who was our assistant, and she left last summer, so I just missed her in the narrative piece. Andrew Shapiro. Amy's position is now held by Sarah Cahill. Andrew Shapiro left in November, and Matt Coogan is working in the economic development capacity, and then Deb Grill is retiring, and Kate Lucchini is her replacement, who's come on board this week. So we have a little bit of overlap there.
So one thing that I'd ask, and again, this is something especially for the new counselors, we're talking about the grant funding process and grant writing and all that, and just explain, because I know this, I'm sure the Ward 7 counselor knows this, having been here for a few years at this point, but explain to these guys just how much money we bring in to do things and to expand programs through the various grants that are brought in.
Well, so one of the standard ones is a community development block grant program, which we're an entitlement community, so we're able to get an allocation there that it's roughly $1 million. And that goes to these housing outcomes that you saw, as well as supporting social service agencies in town that provide assistance with housing or food, domestic violence protection. It supports our economic development programs and our staff costs. Our staff person who manages the housing programs is fully paid out of CDBG, as is the Assistant Community Development Director, Jane Guy, Matt Coogan. A portion of several of our salaries are paid out of CDBG. We also, when we are able to, for other grants, we look for an administrative, a portion of the grant to go to administration. Many grants don't allow you to do that, but where there's an opportunity to do that, we pursue that. So the Green Communities Grant, in past years, we were able to include a percentage for administration, where the round that we just applied for, we have that request in there as well. And then, these grants are going back, everything ties back to a plan objective that we're working on and trying to advance something. Some of them are projects that, we've had a lot of park program grants that have supported a lot of park work in the city. And that ties back to the open space and recreation plan. So currently we're wrapping up McGlue Park. Amanda Chincola's been managing that project. That's got park grant funding. We're starting to do design work for Palmer Cove. For that one, that's probably going to be a park grant application next year. And outside of park grant, we also do some other, have been doing other park improvement work. So for instance, Lafayette Park, that's one that's wrapping up as well.
I'll ask this thing, if you can explain really quickly for the park grant process, because I know we haven't had any park grant come in this year so far, but we've done a lot of parks through that, so if you can explain that quickly.
Yeah, so that's a state program that allows us to, it's a $400,000 grant that comes in with a local match, and so we do preliminary design work, and then the grant comes in to allow us to complete design and to contribute towards the cost of construction. It's not enough to cover the full cost, so we typically match that with CIP or CPA dollars, depending on what the circumstances are. A lot of our work is that combination of different funding sources. So Charter Street Cemetery restoration project, so that's involving a state grant from Mass Cultural Council. It's got CPA money, it's got CIP money. So one of the things that we are always trying to do is the timing of those different, aligning the different funding sources to the project, and sometimes that's a funding source lends itself to one phase, and sometimes we're able to get the stars to align where we can get everything together and go forward in one fell swoop.
Yep, Councilor Peterson, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I might have missed this elsewhere in the big book, but I had assumed that traffic and parking fell under your department. Can you explain, I guess, financially where they fall?
Yeah, so the traffic and parking department is actually a separate department, so they have their own budget. We do a lot of shared planning work on the transportation front. Previously it was very much a parking or operations oriented department, and then it evolved, and so with the Traffic and Parking Commission, there's more transportation planning work that happens, and so there's a good overlap there, and it's great in the new space because in the old space we were adjacent, but now we're just all together. So so they are a separate budget from us.
Thank you.
Through the chair, looking at your personnel.
Yes.
On the 13.43% increase overall, was anybody new hired, or is that just for contractual raises?
So thanks for asking that question. So a big portion of that is the preservation planner position, which had previously been funded from the Mass Historic Commission at 50%. That was a 2-year grant, and so we knew, and we were anticipating this the past 2 budget cycles, that at some point that money would go away, and we would shift that over to the city. So that's what a large portion of that. There's also in the staff transitions that we had this year, the new people came on at a little bit higher rate, so that's another component of it as well.
Meaning a little bit higher percentage being paid by the
Yes.
city as opposed to CDBG federal funding to more accurately reflect the work that they're doing. Can I just add one component to that? I should also point out the preservation planner is also capable of, and does a really good job of writing grants. So while there's an outlay for the city in terms of picking up the full salary, there are resources that come back to us through Mass Historic Grants. We're one of the communities that actually does quite well with MHC, whether it's Green Lawn Cemetery, Charter Street Cemetery, updated historic preservation surveys, which I think is underway right now.
Yeah.
We are, always looking to try and partner additional resources, and that does take both staff capacity, building that, and I think high-quality staff. And in the planning department, certainly, I think, have both of that in terms of both quality and capacity.
I'll say my first year, we had some discussion about the energy and sustainability manager that was through the planning department, and that year, and that position was also initially funded by a grant. And when that came off the books, there was a lot of discussion about, well, why are we paying for this position? And then we found out what the position was producing in terms of grants to the city, and it was roughly $500,000. So a lot of these positions in general bring they tend to be the ones that bring in the outside revenue that we use to fund a lot of the programs that we do, so.
Yeah,
Just
I
in
mean,
general.
and some of it is infrastructure work. So, MassWorks is an important program. So we've gotten to about $3.5 million grants over the past couple of rounds for work down here at Washington Dodge as well as at Boston and Bridge. Just got a $3.4 million grant from the Federal Department of Transportation to assist with a second ferry acquisition. So those are the big ones, multi-million dollars, and we also apply for lots of smaller grants as well that, it may be $40,000, which, when you look at the whole city budget, it's not a lot of money, but for us, in terms of moving forward with a plan or a project, it really is significant. Mm-hmm. But with that $40,000 request, you are still going through the whole application process, and you still have all the management of that. And I think, again, as I referenced earlier, we have the city and the staff and the department has a good reputation, relationship with the state agencies, so that they know that the grant's going to be administered well, and because they're looking for success as well, and so it's great to have those relationships and the reputation from the work that we've done.
Councilor Dibble.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to hear that, Tom. Can you talk a little bit more about your grant success rate and the application rate? I mean, when the mayor was a little bit younger, she was an intern. I think she'll remember fondly. We just about applied for every grant that we heard about. We researched other grants, but every time we got an application in the mayor's office or anywhere else, Mayor Salvo, Mayor Harrington would send this application over to the planning department, and we would get it done. And it seemed like everybody in the entire department were writing grants on a regular basis. When I was elected to the city council, I was looking forward to seeing some of these, but at some point we changed the rules, and I'm not sure why or when or how that happened, but every grant application used to have to come before the city council for a vote. There was some obscure rule 32C, I'll never forget that number, that one of my grant applications that I worked on all weekend on my time got rejected because of the fight going on with the former city planner, Jerry Kavanaugh, with one or two of the city councilors. So my grant application got tabled because I didn't submit Rule 32C as part of this whole thing. I don't know if you know the details why we don't get these applications. Maybe the rules have changed since I left City Hall and I got elected to the city council. As a void of 16 years there. But how about your grant success rate, and of all the applications that you hear about and that you receive, what percentage do you actually apply for?
Yeah, so I think that in many respects things haven't changed. We are all pursuing grants. Just about everyone in the department is, pursuing or managing a grant or doing both at the same time. As I mentioned, there's sort of, the usual crop of programs that we're aware of, and we're always, thinking about, okay, well, we're working on this grant under Mass Cultural Council or Mass Historic Preservation Fund, and, we know that we'll be done with this project, so we're anticipating the next round for what to do. And then there's some opportunities that come up that we didn't know about. So the Mass Housing had a grant opportunity this spring, that we pursued and were successful in getting. I was really pleased with that, for technical assistance, looking at developing an inclusionary housing ordinance and doing some other housing zoning-related work, as well as education. This wasn't a grant. I mentioned the opportunity zone designations. It was another application. There's not a grant dollar that comes with that, but that's something that we pursued as well. In terms of our success rate, it's very good. There's been a couple. There's been two this year where we weren't successful. One of them was an EPA. This is a federal EPA brownfields assessment grant program that was a very intensive application. We weren't successful in that, and we were disappointed. It's highly competitive. It is one of those things where, we're doing a debrief as to why and how we can do better the next round for that. We also did not receive a grant from Mass Development, and that was really a factor of timing. We were applying to two programs at the same time, and they hadn't indicated that by applying for two, we sort of had to pick or choose, and the timing was off. So it was not a rejection because of merit of application. It was a matter of their internal management. And that actually is one that we're going to pursue.
On the other hand, you got another boat.
Sorry? Yeah, we did get another boat, yeah. So that was good.
To follow up on that,
Go ahead.
do you solicit the help from our state rep and state senator to lobby on our behalf for these grant applications?
So we always are looking for letters of support from our delegation, state and federal, depending if it's a federal grant that we're pursuing. And so they're aware of what we're applying for. The Congressman's office has an auto grant email that goes out regularly, and in addition to that, when there's something that comes across their desk that they think, oh, there might be an opportunity here, they contact us to explore pursuing that. So I think we've got good relationships with the state and federal delegations to help us out on that.
It seems like the grant applications have gotten more interesting, if you would. When I was working the planning, they were pretty boring. They were CDA, Community Development Action Grants for sidewalks and trees, and mass relief for trees, and CFIPs for a coastal facility. It was clear that this grant is for this type of expenditure, for bricks and mortar, if you would. I hear less of those type of grants, and I hear more of, I'll call it futuristic, more modern type of grant applications, rather than just old-fashioned bricks and mortar. Is that, or do we still have grant applications that are bricks and mortar, besides the park grants?
Well, the MassWorks program, that's really looking at, infrastructure, streets, sidewalk, utilities, but it's using that to advance an economic development outcome. So I think there's a lot of linkages between transportation and economic development, community development, looking at the outcomes. How is this infrastructure investment going to advance other objectives that the community has? So I think there's, that's kind of the integrative thinking in a number of the programs, and shifting over to Mass Cultural Council. So you think Mass Cultural Council, they're about tourism, but it's economic development. So they're looking at investment in resources, can be facilities that are going to help drive tourism, which helps the economy. So again, it's looking at those outcomes that maybe money going into a facility, but it's generating an economic return.
Yeah. To the new councilors, this is, to end my conversation on this is millions and millions of dollars. Sometimes millions in 1 year. It can be. That's a lot of money. And the mayor and Tom, your whole department seem to be doing a great job. More and more of these awards are being made to Salem on a frequent basis. but it seems like the hosting agencies that are funding these grants seem to really like Salem. The name Salem, the history of Salem, the staff of Salem.
Don't ruin it.
So I think if we keep bragging about who we are and keep doing the good job that you're doing, we'll keep getting these grants. So I encourage you to keep applying for these. It's free money, we just need to put the applications in. It takes time to do it, but it's worth it.
There's a huge return.
I'll give one
So thank
example
you.
of a MassWorks grant that was done in recent years. If you remember, the Ward 3 counselor wasn't living in Salem when Riley Plaza was an oval racetrack. The other counselors were on the committee. But so Riley Plaza was a giant rotary for decades and decades, and I'm sure you've seen pictures of it. And when it was realigned and the parking lot was built, all the utilities that used to be under that roadway remained under that roadway. So when we got a MassWorks grant that was used to spend roughly a year cleaning up and relocating all the old utilities that ran underneath that roadway, which is enabling the hotel and retail and housing development project on Dodge Street and Washington Street to go forward. Because otherwise they'd be building it right through the power lines and right through the sewer lines. So all that stuff was relocated through a MassWorks grant, which is then leveraged to get the construction dollars and bring in the tax revenue of having that and bring in the housing and the hotel rooms. So that's a perfect example of where you can leverage a grant. So, any other comments or questions?
I just want to say for Nick, I really enjoy, having some experience in planning department, I really enjoy working with your planning department, or the mayor's planning department. You retain some good people. I'm sorry to hear that we just lost a bunch, but other people come in and fill the void right behind them, it seems like. For years, and probably still going on now, Salem was like a training pool, if you would, for planners for other towns. They came in here, worked here, and they became town planners somewhere else. And it's just a great place to work in that department.
Thank you. No, I'm thrilled to be here, and I think we've got a really great team and a nice range of skill sets and some longer-term professionals and some newer professionals as well. So there's mentoring that happens both ways, and that's what makes it, I think, a really, really strong department.
Councilor Peterson.
I move to accept this budget of 605,039.
Councilor Peterson moves to accept the planning administration budget, personnel and expenses of $605,039.
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Dibble. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor? Opposed? So moved. Now we move on to Conservation Commission.
I have to recuse myself retroactively.
Excellent.
So the large narrative portion was in the prior section. There is a bit here on the accomplishments from the Conservation Commission. The budget request is there's an increase to include handbooks for members of the Conservation Commission from the Mass Association of Conservation Commissioners, and then also membership for the conservation agent in the American Planning Association.
Any questions on this? This one's pretty straightforward, it's just board stuff. And that portion of the salary, so. Any questions on this? If there aren't any, anyone make a motion?
Motion?
Councilor Dibble.
Yes. Motion to approve the total personnel and non-personnel expenses in the amount of $31,409 to the Conservation Commission.
Councilor Dibble moves to accept the Conservation Commission personnel expenses budget of $31,409. Seconded by Councilor Flynn. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor? Opposed? So moved. And that takes us on to the Planning Board. Oh, we've seen a lot of them lately. Councilor Dibble.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can I just point out to the new councilors that for many years, we used to have to vote on personal expenses, then we vote again on non-personal expenses, and we vote a third time on both of them combined. And
This
last
was a
year,
streamlining, yes.
last year, Steve Lovely, former councilor Steve Lovely, suggests that we just vote on the final column. So now instead of voting 3 times for every line item, we're voting only once.
I will say, for the record, I tried to weasel that change through for several years and kept getting shot down on it, but I was so happy when it finally happened.
So similarly, like with the Conservation Commission, this reflects some staff time and then support for the board and the staff planner.
And then just to point out, the advertising for joint public hearings is based on a estimate of 5 joint public hearings per year.
Yes, yeah.
So, any questions on this? Councilor Dibble?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like for you to get with the mayor and with the city solicitor and hopefully reduce our amount of advertising costs and find ways of shrinking our ads and smaller fonts, less words, however we can do it, because between all the city departments, we're spending way too much for the reward that we get. I mean, just not a lot of people even look at these ads anymore. So if we can reduce it to the minimum that's required to meet the laws, we'll save money. Your line item for this one department is not that big, but if you combine all your line items for all your divisions, combine it with all the other departments, it's a lot of money.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. I'll ask you that question again next year.
Okay.
See how you did.
Any further discussion? See none? If there's no further questions, if anybody wants to make a motion on this? Councilor Peterson?
I move that we accept this budget of $36,401.
So Councilor Peterson moves to accept the planning board personnel and expenses budget of $36,401.
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Dibble. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor? Opposed? So moved. Now to market and tourism.
So in this section of our budget is funding that goes to Destination Salem from the hotel motel tax revenue. And so you'll see in this year's budget, there's an increase under its promotion and marketing. And that increase is reflective of the increased hotel motel tax that has been generated, and a portion of that going to Destination Salem.
Yep, Councilor Peterson.
Interject. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for one moment. I just wanted to go on the record to say, because I was a little bit confused about whether the fact that I am the council liaison to Destination Salem means as like an official member if I would have to recuse myself or not, but I clarified with the city solicitor that I do not. So, thank you.
Well, did you get paid for that liaisonship?
No.
Okay.
There's no financial interest, therefore.
Right. Just trying to stay above board.
Councilor
Through
Flynn.
the chair, the electricity bill. See, the 775. What does that encompass?
So this is for utilities at Old Town Hall. We pay the electric bill.
It's for Old Town Hall.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or I'm sorry, this is Artist Row. I'm sorry, this is the Artist Row bill.
Okay.
Yep.
And then the bathrooms as well are
Yeah.
in there.
Okay.
Councilor Dibble.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Tom, you mentioned the $50,000 goes to Destination Salem. And I suppose other monies go to them as well, grants and other line items. What oversight happens there if they're following the city procurement rules, purchasing, everything?
So Destination Salem's an independent 501c. They're not a 3, they're a
4 or a 6?
6. So they're an independent entity, and so they don't need to comply with 30B because they're not a municipal organization. Kathy Nguyen, who's the deputy director, is our liaison and is part of the board meetings for Destination Salem. And then there's the reporting out that they do to their board and to the city on the outcomes that they've accomplished, which are in the narrative here which are significant. And I think, we see it through their marketing efforts, which is not just October, it's year-round, and looking to grow the tourist spending dollar and time in Salem. And Destination Salem, I think, I'll say it, I think you all know it, it's not, doesn't operate on its own, it's very, integrated and connected to other key partners in the city, so the Chamber of Commerce, Salem Main Streets, Salem Partnership, as well then regionally to the North of Boston Convention and Visitors Bureau, and then, they're involved with national as well as international marketing promotion.
Go ahead.
To follow up, I need to ask that question again. What procedures are in place to make sure that they follow the rules? I know that this is taxpayer money and tax money. Hotel tax is still public monies that comes to the city of Salem. And then we turn it over. How do we know that they're following the rules? They do great things, don't get me wrong. But like anything else, errors can pop up. So we'd be remissing ourselves without asking those questions because, again, it's tax money. Like Little League, every once in a while somebody embezzles something from Little League of some size amount of money. And there's an article in the paper right now talking about, I won't get into the name or anything else, but it's a former coach that I coached with years ago who later went on to do other things, but he embezzled hundreds of thousands of dollars. This type of stuff happens. What safeguards are in place by your department that oversees this and this tax money?
Yeah, so I think that this funding is a portion of what Destination Salem operates with. They also, this is I'm not sure the percentage, but less than 50% of their revenue. The rest is privately raised. So we receive a quarterly invoice. It's the municipal funds are going to the operations, and there is, as I said, governance by their board of directors over the budget and the staff utilization of those funds. And with the city, there's a council liaison to that, but then there's also the staff oversight and involvement in that process.
And the city has a board seat.
Correct.
Yeah.
I sit on it for the city. There's a treasurer. These funds go to not only support staff, but provide obviously promotional and marketing materials to attract visitors here. This was done several years ago as a result of a partnership because Destination Salem was falling apart when it was just solely privately funded and there wasn't advertising or marketing going on in the city. Since that time, and our desire to split half of our hotel motel proceeds to market the city, these are visitor dollars. The commitment, and you may recall this going back to when Mayor Salvo was mayor, that 100%, when this local option was adopted by the city council, 100% of the proceeds were supposed to go back into the visitor industry. The Office of Tourism and Cultural Affairs existed within the city, and that's where those dollars went. Somewhere along the line, the last administration, or I'm not sure exactly when, budget got tight, and they started pulling back the reins, and there were political differences and whatnot. Destination Salem was falling apart. We ended up getting sort of bailed out with some assistance from the state legislature. The group was reformed with the new bylaws and a specific purpose of making it a public-private partnership. So rather than the city fully funding an Office of Tourism and Cultural Affairs, a portion of hotel motel proceeds go back to support the organization that are matched extensively by private dollars to market and promote the community, and setting up sort of a win-win. If there are more visitors coming, staying in hotels, there's more resources going back to support promotion and marketing, and the community and the private sector are working together to raise those dollars to support a very important industry in our city. So there is a lot of oversight with respect to both the bylaws and a position. I believe there's a single audit that occurs as well on an annual basis, like any organization, and it's fully transparent. So happy to share that with you. I know as board members we receive that on a monthly basis, and there is an annual audit review. And no one wants these funds misappropriated. Believe me, I think they'd like more because most of it is going into marketing and promotion, frankly, not staff resources. And we're bearing the benefit of that. We're seeing more visitors coming. When we track the numbers from where we were and where we are today, there's no doubt there's been a boost in tourism, a boost in people staying in hotels, not only more rooms, but the length of time people are here. There's a strategic plan that was adopted 6 years ago. It's been updated recently, really trying to target specific markets that are here, visitor survey information. Our model, frankly, is the envy in Massachusetts. Gloucester is adopting something similar. Their hotel motel proceeds are now going to support, I think they call it Discover Gloucester. So we're usually touted around the state as a community that's figured out how to both market and promote their community using visitor dollars to do so, and is reaping the benefits and the rewards of heads in beds, as we like to say, to help support that industry. So I'm hopeful that as we move forward, we'll continue to have a strong partnership. There are differences at times, but I think folks work things out. At one point, it was, what are we promoting most specifically? There was discussions around whether it should solely focus on witches, other parts of our history. It's very clear the strategic plan talks about, we don't really need anybody else coming here in October. Let's make sure it's well managed. But what are we doing on those shoulder seasons? Only 30% of the funding goes to support witch history in October. The rest of it is really going to support other aspects of our history. We know people are going to say the first thing they're going to say when you tell them you're from Salem or talk about Salem is something to do with witches. What's the second and the third and the fourth? That has also attracted the rise of festivals and activities. We think that's really positive as well. So there's a whole strategy behind it.
Salem Arts Festival's this weekend, by the way,
Yes,
starting
indeed,
tomorrow.
kicking off, bigger and bolder than ever, I think. So there is a strategy behind it, and I don't want to do it. I think it's important for us to make sure it's much larger than just sending a check. There's a real engagement and involvement with respect to what we're doing to promote and market Salem.
So, Councilor Dibble?
Clearly, thank you, Mr. Chair. Clearly, you're doing a very good job with this, Mayor, and thank you, Tom. Just to confirm the numbers, so 50% of the room tax goes to Destination Salem?
To be honest, we're shorting them a little bit. So we got, the rooms tax comes in, we won't know what we fully collected for the current fiscal year until the end of this fiscal year. It comes in, it's paid in arrears from the state. So we did up it this year because we're collecting more. We were not paying anywhere near our 50% share. And we're seeing that consistently. So this is closer to our 50% share. We'll see what the numbers actually are when we get the final quarter. But based on what the tracking is right now, we feel like this is a fair split.
And the other 50% in whole goes to the general fund?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So, any further questions? Seeing none, somebody wants to make a motion? Councilor Flynn?
Motion to accept.
So Councilor Flynn moves to accept the Market and Tourism Expenses Budget, Departmental Budget of $281,425, seconded by Councilor Peterson. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor? Opposed? So moved.
One more.
Historical Commission.
So the significant piece in this is the personnel, which I mentioned previously, that the position is now split 50% under the Historical Commission and 50% under Planning Administration.
So it's otherwise, yep.
And then there's $100 for membership in, I forget now, the national, it's for the commission. The National Alliance for Preservation Commissioners. So they were interested in being able to access.
Any questions on this one? Disclaimer, my wife's on this commission, so not that there's any money involved. But any questions on this? If not, see a motion. Councilor Dibble.
Motion to approve the $30,333 for total personal and non-personal expenses for the historic preservation.
Councilor Dibble moves to accept the budget for Historical Commission personnel and expenses of $30,333, seconded by Councilor Peterson. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor? Opposed? So moved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and that brings us to our last topic for the day, which is beat up the mayor.
We already did that, didn't we?
Yeah, but now we can really light into it.
Exactly.
We're going to see a lot of her over the next week and a half, so.
Spend some quality time together.
Yes, it's bonding, and not the financial.
Wow, the dad jokes just keep coming.
Oh, yeah, well, you know, learner's permit, so that enhances my dadhood. All right. So, 2.02%.
Yeah, I'm happy to go through any of the specific numbers. There's not very many changes with respect to the overall budget. There is a salary adjustment based on the vote taken by the council for midway through this fiscal year for a salary increase for the office of mayor. You'll see that we have tried to reduce some of the expense account budgets to make up for a portion of that. Specifically in our consulting services line item budget, with the hope of trying to keep this increase as low as possible. There's no change in terms of staffing for the office proposed, and most of the work we're doing on the expenses side of the house is, you know, fairly consistent.
Any questions? Councilor Dibble?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mayor, within the budget, I've been trying to track it on each page, but it looks like it's a 2% raise across the board. Is that correct, or is it
For
not?
exempt employees, correct. Yep. And that mirrors what our union collective bargaining agreements have been increased for the most part.
Yep, now that we've been thinking about it, we've been throwing around, we actually discussed it twice now, through you to Dominic, I guess. How soon can we get those numbers that we asked for earlier on what the actual budget increase is for the non-school
breakdown?
related?
Yeah, we'll work with the finance department to get that for
we'll
you.
get it for you for next week. I mean, probably won't be by tomorrow, but
Yeah.
we'll get it for you for next week.
Just email it out to all of us?
I'm sorry?
Email it out to all of us?
Well, I'll send it to the whole council.
Yeah,
we'll
great.
And
share
then
the
we meet
information.
again on Monday, so.
Have more meetings Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, whatever. There's a whole bunch of them lined up. Be nice to have it before we go too much further.
Yep, absolutely.
Any questions, members of the council?
Let's see, it's-
8-8.
Yeah, I'm right on it. 8:10.
Sure, Councilor Dibble.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to do this simple. Motion to approve $566,353 total personal and non-personal expenses in the mayor's line.
Okay, Councilor Dibble moves to approve the mayor's personnel and non-personnel expenses budget of $566,353. Do I have a second? Seconded by Councilor Peterson. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? So moved.
Good job, Mayor, thank you.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate the opportunity to share information and answer questions.
All right, that takes care of everything we have on the schedule for tonight. So if somebody would like to make a motion, Councilor Peterson?
Motion to adjourn?
Councilor Peterson moves we adjourn. We are adjourned.
You beat me here from Lynch Park, dude, huh?
You were there too?